Chapter 900. The police arrived very quickly. In less than 10 minutes, the police cars arrived in a vast array. Yushuya must have called the police early. Her sister had already driven over when she saw that the license plate was strange. When Qiao Jin saw the police, she also called He Yao to inform her. This matter involved a formation master. If she handed it over to the police, she might be taken back for interrogation. Before He Yao arrived, she had been waiting on the spot. They couldn't take the girls out. They would scream as soon as they were touched. Since the police were here, Qiao Jin didn't do anything unnecessary. Medical staff also came. They had no choice but to inject the girls with tranquilizers before taking them out one by one. After a final count, there were 7 girls in total. 2 of them were dead, 3 of them were unconscious, and 2 of them were crying the whole time. The girls that Ping Yuan's father caught last time had recovered well. After all, they were only locked up for a short period of time. They were a little scared, but other than that, they were fine. However, these girls had seen the cruelest scenes. They were probably in bad shape. You're Qiao Jin. Yushuya's sister, Yu Haizi, walked over in a black police uniform. She had neat short hair and black boots. She looked valiant. In terms of appearance, she was slightly more delicate than Yushuya. Simply put, she didn't look like Yushuya. Qiao Jin stood there and looked at the scenery outside. This junkyard was in the suburbs. Although it was close to the road, it was very remote. There weren't many people living nearby. That was why they hadn't caught the girls yet. Qiao Jin heard the voice and looked at Yu Haizi. He nodded. Yes, hello. Yu Haizi reached out her hand. I'm Yushuya's sister, Yu Haizi. Yu Haizi noticed this strange girl when she came. Yushuya didn't explain clearly on the phone, and she couldn't explain clearly when she was at the scene. She only said that she followed this girl because she saw that she was kidnapped. She said that she was the sister of her classmate and was worried that she would be in danger. However, when she arrived, she found that the girl had escaped. Yu Haizi had already guessed how Yushuya managed to escape. Yushuya didn't dare to say it out loud. She knew that her sister was different from others since birth. She had abilities that others didn't have. Yu Haizi had never thought that Yushuya was unique. She had always told her to hide it well. Now, it seemed that she had met someone of the same kind. Otherwise, how could a girl like Qiao Jin escape from the hands of a vicious murderer and subdue him and save the others? Qiao Jin stared at Yu Haizi's palm for 3 seconds before she reached out and shook her hand. Hello. Yu Haizi retracted her hand. Looking at the girl's exquisite temperament and calm expression, she had already expected this. She smiled and said, You're not afraid at all. Do you know who this man is? Qiao Jin looked at her. Her eyes were clear. Yu Haizi said slowly, He is a serial killer we are tracking. He committed crimes in other places and fled here. He has more than 10 lives on his back. Are you really not afraid at all? If I was afraid, do you think you can still see me here? Qiao Jin smiled. He Yao's voice came from the other side. Qiao Jin. Chapter 901. Now that He Yao was involved, this matter became much more convenient. Qiao Jin was suspicious, but after the order was given, the matter was diverted by the higher-ups. Yu Haizi couldn't interrogate Qiao Jin anymore. When Yu Haizi saw He Yao and the others come to deal with the scene, she didn't know who they were, but she had a vague idea. In the end, she saw Qiao Jin get into their car and leave. Yu Haizi went back to find her sister. What method did she use to break free? Yushuya was still immersed in the trauma of seeing those girls. She felt a little uncomfortable. Plus, she saw a particularly disgusting woman, so she looked a little depressed. I'm not sure. Maybe it's someone like me. Yushuya looked at her sister. Did she leave? Yu Haizi nodded. She looked around and said in a low voice, the higher-ups gave the order. I can't interrogate her. She has nothing to do with this matter. Yushuya explained for her sister, when she came here, she already subdued those two people, too. Yu Haizi narrowed her eyes. Who's the other one? I can't describe it. It's a terrifying monster woman. Only her face is good. The lower half of her body is a mass of rotten meat. There are a few thin and long human arms in the rotten meat. Thinking of what she saw, Yushuya couldn't help but want to vomit when she described it. She couldn't help but vomit. Yu Haizi immediately said, take your time. Yushuya endured the acid in her stomach, but she disappeared. I don't know what happened. She was probably killed by her. Yu Haizi was silent for a moment. She knew some things, but it didn't mean she could say it. Since she disappeared now, it solved a problem. Otherwise, if they saw that thing with their own eyes, they wouldn't know how to explain it. Yu Haizi pondered for a moment. That means this matter isn't a simple murder case. That monster is obviously not human. She pondered and helped Yushuya up, reminding her, don't tell anyone about this. Remember. Yushuya nodded, still a little uncomfortable. I know. What did you see? Qiao Jin said that there was an array master there, but when they arrived, the array master had already disappeared. Due to the special nature of the case, this case could only be closed as a serial murder case. As for whether there were more things involved, it was not easy to investigate. That woman is using someone else as a substitute. Qiao Jin was in the car. He leaned against the back of the car and looked at the scenery outside the window. He was deep in thought. It's an old monster who has lived for more than 100 years. I'm doing justice for the heavens. Hiao, she couldn't help but ask, is there any other information? Qiao Jin shook his head. The murderer cooperated with her, and the two of them ran into each other. Then, did that person see you use your ability? When the time comes, will he say something that he shouldn't? Hiao frowned. After all, this was a matter of the spirit group. If the murderer said something that he shouldn't have said, she would definitely inform the other side to clean up. Qiao Jin said, no, he can't say it. He couldn't say a word about himself. He would only honestly explain the process of his murder. Chapter 902. When he returned to the Mu family, Musichut and Musilian were not back yet. Qiao Fei found it strange that Qiao Jin had come home alone. Didn't you go out with them? Where are your second and third brothers? Qiao Jin replied, they are still playing. I had something to do in the afternoon, so I parted ways with them. Qiao Fei asked again, what's the matter? Qiao Jin said, it's a secret. Qiao Fei. Her heart was broken. Now, her daughter didn't want to tell her. She had already started to openly say the word secret. Her heart was so cold. At this moment, Qiao Jin received a call from Song Yanqing. He said in a light tone, Chai Yueli's matter has been settled. Don't worry, she won't disturb you in the future. Qiao Jin asked, sent abroad? Song Yanqing said, yes, Ji Fanjing was originally studying abroad. It was Ji Sikai's idea to send him abroad. On the surface, the Ji family was a family. Seeing how fierce the first and second families were, they should know some problems. Ji Sikai had just taken power. Although Chai Yueli did not get Ji Pingan's shares, Ji Fanjing listened to her. She originally wanted Ji Fanjing to enter the company while Ji Sikai's foundation was unstable. However, because of her meddling, she was dealt with first. Even Ji Fanjing could only go overseas. Of course, the Ji family had branches overseas. Ji Sikai was using the excuse of nurturing him. However, it was hard to say whether Ji Fanjing would be able to enter the core of the Ji family's power. However, no matter how daring Chai Yueli was, she would do it abroad first. If there were any signs, Ji Sikai would probably kill her first. She was thankful that she was Qiao Jin's biological mother, so she would not be blamed. He just did not want her to wander around the capital. After Qiao Jin heard this, she nodded. Song Yanqing smiled. What are you doing? In the afternoon, I met the murderer, the person who sent me the message. Qiao Jin told him about what happened in the afternoon. I got rid of him, but things went beyond my expectations. He cooperated with the array master and captured a lot of girls. I killed the array master, but it's hard to say if those girls can recover. In addition, I also met an array master, a somewhat strange girl. Isn't it said that there aren't many array masters in the imperial capital? Why do I feel like you're always meeting one? Song Yanqing heard her understatement and knew that nothing had happened to her, so he didn't ask anything unnecessary. There is still a connection between spiritual readers, Yi Zichen said. Although the number of spiritual readers was small, they would know once they met them. They were naturally attractive, which was why Qiao Jin had met a spiritual reader. Just like in the same circle, they would see each other frequently. There would always be some news. Song Yanqing paused for a moment. It seems that spiritualists are indeed rare. Up until now, Song Yanqing had only met you, and it was Qiao Jin who discovered her. One could imagine how rare spiritualists were. Qiao Jin said, the greater the ability, the less favored you will be. Naturally, it is difficult for you to appear. Spiritualists were born with extraordinary abilities. They could even see the past and know the future. Of course, such powerful existences were not common. In this world, it was impossible for there to be only two spiritualists, Song Yanqing and you. It was only when the time came that others would appear. Qiao Jin continued to ask him, after returning, did you continue to talk about Li Jiao? You said that she had seen the woman in Li Jiao's world. Qiao Jin naturally remembered this matter. Chapter 903. No. Song Yanqing sighed. I also asked. According to you, he would dream of some things from time to time, but they were all fragments. He was too young at that time, so he couldn't remember clearly. There's no hurry. Qiao Jin said softly, if it's possible, I'll probably send him to school. I'll send him there after the new year, Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing would sometimes chat about some topics. Today, Mu Jinming came back early. When he saw Qiao Jin standing in the living room and talking on the phone, Xiao Fei propped her chin up and pricked up her ears. She wanted to listen but didn't dare to get closer. Mu Jinming asked Xiao Fei in a low voice, who is she talking to? Xiao Fei snorted. Who else besides Lord Song? She took Mu Jinming's coat and hung it on the shelf in the living room. Why are you back so early today? Don't you have to work overtime? There's not much work to do at the company today. I came back as soon as I finished. Didn't you always say that I only care about the company? He laughed and leaned over to kiss Xiao Fei. Are you unhappy that I'm back now? Xiao Fei glanced at Qiao Jin. Seeing that he didn't reply, she pushed Mu Jinming. What are you doing? The child is still here. Don't be shameless. The older you get, the more indecent you are. Mu Jinming, she's on the phone. She won't notice us. Qiao Jin turned around. But I can hear her. Mu Jinming and Xiao Fei, the two coughed. Mu Jinming greeted Qiao Jin. Are you on the phone with Yanqing? Xiao Jin nodded. Song Yanqing also heard the conversation on the phone. He chuckled. I'll call you when I have time. I'll hang up first. Xiao Jin, okay, bye. After hanging up, Xiao Jin also looked at Mu Jinming. You're back early today, Jinming. Mu Jinming. The matter has been settled in advance. What do you want to eat tonight? Do you want the kitchen to make it for you? Xiao Jin, anything is fine. I'm not picky. Xiao Fei, nonsense, you don't eat fatty meat. Xiao Jin. She paused for a moment before continuing, fatty meat doesn't taste good. It's too greasy. Xiao Fei snorted, that's still being picky. How can a good child be picky about food? Xiao Jin, then treat me as a bad kid. Xiao Fei. When Mu Jinming heard the conversation between Xiao Fei and Xiao Jin, he couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, Mu Xiangshan, who was carrying fishing tools outside, also snorted as he came back. When he saw Mu Jinming, he even rolled his eyes. This was a little strange. Mu Xiangshan usually wouldn't treat Mu Jinming like this. Mu Jinming was puzzled and asked, Dad, weren't you fishing outside? You're back early today. Why do you look unhappy? Mu Xiangshan said angrily, don't call me Dad. I'm not your dad. He threw the fishing tools on the ground and sat on the sofa. He asked the servant to make him a cup of tea. He looked quite angry. Mu Jinming and Xiao Fei looked at each other. Did the old man eat explosives today? Xiao Jin also looked at Mu Xiangshan. Xiangshan, who provoked you? Mu Xiangshan. How rude. I wasn't provoked by anyone. I just don't like Mu Jinming. Mu Jinming felt very innocent. At the same time, he felt that Mu Xiangshan was being unreasonable. He frowned slightly and said, Dad, what did I do to you? There has to be a reason. You can't vent your anger on us when you come back. Chapter 904. Mu Xiangshan pointed at him and said, Unfilial son, if it weren't for you, would I still be bullied? Then, Mu Xiangshan gave a simple explanation of what had happened. It turned out that it was an old classmate of Mu Xiangshan's when he was studying. Coincidentally, that person was the son of a helper in Mu Xiangshan's family when he was young. Everyone knew that Mu Xiangshan was still a young master when he was young, but later on, his family declined. When he was fishing this time, a group of old people happened to bump into him at the club. Decades later, when they bumped into each other, they realized that they knew each other. The son of that helper had already become a famous tycoon and even changed his name. If they hadn't bumped into each other this time, they probably wouldn't have thought that they would have the chance to see each other again in this lifetime. When old acquaintances met, they had not seen each other for decades. When they were young, they played together. Their statuses were different, so when they saw each other in old age, it was inevitable that they would compare with each other. The other party didn't expect Mu Xiangshan to make a comeback. However, he had heard a lot about Mu Jinming. It wasn't a secret that Mu Xiangshan was forced to leave the country. The other party always bragged that he had a bunch of good children. He said that he made a fortune when he was young, and now he was enjoying his old age. In short, Mu Xiangshan felt uncomfortable. Especially when the other party's family members called him Dad affectionately. Mu Xiangshan was fishing, but no one asked when he would be home. Mu Xiangshan felt sour. When he returned home, didn't they find Mu Jinming an eyesore? Mu Jinming felt that Mu Xiangshan was really being unreasonable. Dad, it's not like you don't know that I work at the company. You fish every day, yet you still need Xiao Fei to ask if you're coming home. Didn't we ignore Jean when she ran out? Mu Xiangshan rolled his eyes. Xiao Fei also said, Dad, how can you compare yourself to others in this aspect? They have many sons, but you have many grandchildren too. Tomorrow, I'll get Muzillion to accompany you fishing. Mu Xiangshan pointed at her and said, you have evil intentions. I know you don't like me, yet you still want Muzillion to come with me. You want him to anger me to death sooner. Xiao Fei. What's wrong with Qilian? I feel indignant for you to say that about him. Mu Xiangshan, what do you think is good about him? Xiao Fei, He couldn't quite put it into words. Xiao Jin felt that Muzillion had to be present at this scene, so he took advantage of the fact that Muzillion was not around to badmouth him. She smiled and said, you still care about such a small matter. Mu Xiangshan turned to look at her and suddenly said, that's right, that old thing said that he wanted to treat our family to a meal. I told him that all of you are busy and that we can't meet him every day. We have to find excuses to brush him off. Come with me to the club tomorrow and let him know how beautiful my granddaughter is. You can't be compared to the bunch of crooked melons and split dates he gave birth to. Xiao Jin, Xiao Fei disagreed. Dad, how can you judge a book by its cover? Mu Xiangshan raised his chin. Why not? You have to know that the reason why your husband is so handsome is because he inherited my genes. Back then, if it weren't for his good looks, would you still be so stubbornly clinging on to him? I don't believe it. Seeing that Mu Xiangshan was openly trying to sow discord between them, Xiao Fei disagreed. What nonsense are you spouting? Dad, what nonsense are you spouting? Am I that kind of person? Mu Jinming. Chapter 905. As if accidentally exposing something, Xiao Fei quickly changed the topic. However, Xiao Jin glanced at Mu Xiangshan meaningfully and said, okay, I'll go with you tomorrow. Anyway, the school was going to be on holiday soon, so it didn't matter if she took leave. It was fine as long as she could maintain her grades and graduate safely. She didn't have much ambition. Later, Muzillion and Musichu called and said that they were eating outside and wouldn't be coming back, so Xiao Fei didn't wait for them. When Xiao Jin went back to the bathroom after dinner, he received a call from He Yao. We've investigated that matter. It's a serial killer. As for the array master you mentioned, the traces have disappeared too cleanly. He didn't say anything either. Do you want to continue tracking him? Xiao Jin, no, there's nothing important on that array master, but, He Yao, but what? Xiao Jin, generally speaking, no one would target me for no reason. Since he's a serial killer, help me check if there's any special information on the victims he killed. She had already confirmed that there was no special information on that array master, otherwise she wouldn't have killed him so cleanly. That kind of person didn't deserve to live. Victims. He Yao paused for a moment. This is a bit troublesome. According to the police investigation, he's responsible for more than a dozen lives, spanning from more than a decade to now. It might be a bit difficult to clean them all up, but of course, it's only a matter of time. Once I'm done, I'll send you all the information. Xiao Jin, okay, thank you. He Yao was flattered. Don't say thank you. You've solved so many problems for the spirit group. No matter what, we should be thanking you. Back then, she had also monitored Xiao Jin, but when something big happened to the spirit group, Xiao Jin had to step in to solve it. Otherwise, who knew how many people would have died in the Shang Yishan incident? Since there was no problem with Xiao Jin, and she wanted to remain mysterious, the higher-ups turned a blind eye to it. In short, as long as he didn't want to harm the world, the higher-ups wouldn't care much about Xiao Jin. Since she had asked for help, He Yao would definitely do her best. Xiao Jin, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. He Yao, who would dare to say that this was a piece of cake? Perhaps this was what it meant to be a big shot. She didn't know if it was just He Yao's imagination, but she felt that the current big boss looked cold and aloof, but he was much easier to talk to than before. Maybe it's just a little more human. She couldn't figure it out, so of course, she investigated according to what Xiao Jin said. Xiao Jin hung up the phone. He thought about going to the club with Mu Xiangshan tomorrow, so he went to bed early. The next day, she woke up early. She woke up at 7 o'clock and had breakfast. Mu Xiangshan was naturally already up. He put on his gray vest and carried his fishing tools. After breakfast, he set off with Xiao Jin. The reason why he went so early was because this group of old people had some gathering activities. Now that he was old, he was very patient. He could talk about the news and gossip for the entire day. Every day, Mu Xiangshan would leave early and return late. He was very happy. Even if he brought Xiao Jin with him today, he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. On the way there, the Mu family's chauffeur drove them. The journey was a little long. It took about an hour and a half to reach the fishing club in the suburbs. Chapter 906. It wasn't entirely true that it was just fishing. There were other activities inside as well. There were golf, billiards, and so on, but most of them were for the elderly. It was like an entertainment center for the elderly. The only difference was that all the facilities here were very high-end to ensure that these rich old people could enjoy themselves. After Xiao Jin arrived, he saw a few familiar faces. They were all from the ghost center that Song Yanqing had brought him to last time. They were surprised to see Mu Xiangshan bring his granddaughter today. One of the more familiar people smiled when he saw Mu Xiangshan. "Yo, old Mu, you brought your granddaughter today. What's the meaning of this? Are you bullying us because we didn't bring our grandchildren?" Mu Xiangshan smiled hypocritically. "Of course not. I just brought her here to broaden her horizons." Another gossipy old man asked, "I heard that your granddaughter is with the Song kid?" Mu Xiangshan was very direct. "Yeah, you only found out now. Your information network is outdated." These words caused everyone to burst into laughter. Xiao Jin looked around. The old people here were very peaceful. He could also see the aura of someone who was usually in a high position. After a while, an old man who looked a little tired came over. When he saw Mu Xiangshan, he laughed and said, "Xiangshan, I heard that you brought your granddaughter here today. What's wrong? Are you too shocked?" Mu Xiangshan heard this and rolled his eyes. "Fugue, do you know how to talk?" The old man named Fugue coughed and his face turned red. "I already said that my name is Guijisher." Mu Xiangshan pointed at Xiao Jin and smiled. "Fugue. He used to be called Guo Fugue. What's wrong with this name? Why did he have to change it?" Xiao Jin was a little amused. He looked at Guijisher and laughed. "Hello, old Master Gua." Her address was a little strange, but Guijisher didn't care. As long as it wasn't Fugue, everything was fine. He really hated this old name. Later, he went to the more fashionable Xiangdu. Of course, he couldn't let people know what his old name was. In fact, there was nothing wrong with this name. He just cared about it. Now that he saw Mu Xiangshan, he glared at him and covered his mouth and coughed. "Mu Xiangshan, stay away from me." "Guijisher, I'm coughing at you." As he spoke, he even pretended to cough at Mu Xiangshan. Mu Xiangshan took a step back, and Guijisher didn't follow up. After all, everyone here had status, and it was fine to just joke around a bit. Xiao Jin had learned something new. He didn't expect a bunch of old people to be so childish. However, she glanced at Guijisher, then at Mu Xiangshan. There was a meaningful look in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. She actually didn't have much to do here, she just accompanied Mu Xiangshan to fish. Due to her arrival, the entire senior center became much livelier. However, most of the time, the seniors were quite quiet. They only sat there drinking tea and chatting. They would talk about their own family matters. Some families were not peaceful, while others were living happily. After all, they were all rich and had their own troubles. Qiao Jin knew that Mu Xiangshan was sulking for a reason. That was because Gu Jisher had been showing off how successful his children were. They had inherited his family business and managed it well. He was also mocking Mu Xiangshan. Chapter 907. The world of the elderly was quite complicated. Scheming against each other, Qiao Jin was playing with her phone. Occasionally, other elderly people would talk to her, and she would stand up to answer. However, Gu Jisher was really in poor health, so he left in the afternoon. Seeing him leave, Mu Xiangshan lazily packed up his things and took Qiao Jin home. It was not until they left the elderly club that Qiao Jin smiled faintly and said, "What do you want me to see?" "What?" Mu Xiangshan glanced at her. "What are you looking at?" "I just brought you here to broaden your horizons." Qiao Jin said to herself, "There's something wrong with his body. From his complexion, it doesn't look like a normal lesion of old age. It looks like he's been poisoned." "How did you know?" Mu Xiangshan looked at her again. Perhaps he did not expect this, but his eyes were a little complicated. He opened his mouth but did not say anything. After a while, he said, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Qiao Jin, it's pointless for you to say this. If you didn't know, you wouldn't have asked me to see him to confirm that there's something wrong with him." "What's wrong with his family?" Mu Xiangshan knew that there was no need to hide it anymore. He just asked her, "Is he really poisoned?" "Are you sure?" Qiao Jin nodded. "The lesion is not normal." A thick green aura on his body represented a lesion. However, the lesion could be poisoning or a serious illness. It was hard to tell from a simple look. Mu Xiangshan sneered. "You're still showing off. Everyone in your family is dying." Qiao Jin was a little confused. "Why did you ask me to see him?" Mu Xiangshan looked up at the surrounding scenery with a complicated expression. "I used to have a good relationship with him when I was young. When something happened to my family, his father helped me for a period of time. Later, we separated not long after. I didn't expect him to go to Xiangdu and make a fortune. His life is good, but his family is not peaceful. In his old age, they did not let him have a good life. I received some information here. I didn't want to alert him, so I asked you to come see him." Qiao Jin smiled. It seemed that Mu Xiangshan had already guessed something. Now, he had complete faith in her. "Do you think he's been bewitched or something?" Qiao Jin had only said that he knew fortune-telling. Mu Xiangshan must have received some strange information, most likely related to spiritual readers. Otherwise, if he knew that Gu Jisher was poisoned, he wouldn't have asked Qiao Jin to take a look. Is there really such a thing? Mu Xiangshan was a little surprised and a little surprised. "Qiao Jin, there's no tame head." Mu Xiangshan immediately let out a sigh of relief. "I knew it. How could it be that ridiculous?" "Qiao Jin, but there are some things that aren't that different from tame head." Mu Xiangshan, he took a deep breath and looked at Qiao Jin. "All right, you've already guessed it. Tell me, what's wrong with him? Is it just poisoning?" "We can basically confirm that he was poisoned. If you want to know more, just take me to his house." Gu Jisher seemed to be living a comfortable life, but his health was not good. Since he was poisoned, there must be a lot of trouble in his family. He didn't tell outsiders, probably because he didn't know. Looking at his flaunting appearance, he felt that everyone in his family treated him sincerely. Mu Xiangshan thought for a moment. I'll take you there tomorrow. If not for the fact that his father helped me in the past, I would treat it as returning a favor. That old thing only knows how to provoke me every day. Qiao Jin. Chapter 908. When Qiao Jin returned home, she was chased around by her family members and questioned. What did he learn from fishing with Mu Xiangshan? What could he learn from fishing? This was a question that confused the human world. Qiao Jin didn't say anything about Guijisher. He only briefly heard about it from Mu Xiangshan on the way back. When Guijisher was young, he and Guijisher were playmates because his father helped him. Later, when Mu Xiangshan's family had an accident, Guijisher's father helped him for a period of time. Since then, Mu Xiangshan remembered it. Guijisher's family moved away later because they were forced to make a living. At that time, Mu Xiangshan had already left. Later, when he made a comeback, he went to look for Guijisher's family but couldn't find them. The reason was that Guijisher had gone too far. He listened to the master and changed his name to Guijisher. His father passed away early. Mu Xiangshan was quite regretful. When he said to Qiao Jin, he said, he was also a benefactor. I didn't expect that I didn't even see him for the last time. The old man was also a little melancholy. After all, in life, there were always some people who helped you. He could remember it for a long time. His character could also be seen. He saw Guijisher some time ago. If the old man didn't show off his family's deeds, Mu Xiangshan wouldn't have recognized him. Guijisher was also old. He didn't remember the past so clearly and didn't recognize Mu Xiangshan. Mu Xiangshan always felt strange. People say that the more you lack something, the more you show it. Guijisher didn't lack money. He showed off his children's filial piety. He talked about what his grandson bought, said, and did. What his granddaughter bought, said, and did. The people in the club heard so much that their ears grew calluses. Mu Xiangshan thought that it was quite good. It meant that Guijisher was living well in his old age. Later, another old man meaningfully told him that when Guijisher made a fortune in Xiangdu, it was said that the methods he used were not particularly good. He suffered some retribution in his old age. He didn't know it himself. His family was probably not peaceful. Moreover, this retribution was not Guijisher's fault, but Guijisher had to bear it. He was already so old, so who could Mu Xiangshan possibly harm him? Later, he heard rumors that someone in Guijisher's family was restless. He also felt that Guijisher's condition was not right. He thought that Guijisher's father was still helpful to him when he was young, so he looked for Qiao Jin to see if he could find out what was wrong. He didn't expect that he would be able to tell at a glance that Guijisher was poisoned. This made people's hair stand on end. And it wasn't just poison. What if there was something else going on in this house? Mu Xiangshan didn't really believe in those things, but he knew that Xiangdu had always been a chaotic place. There were countless witchcraft sects there. Back in the days when Xiangdu was popular, there were many news about female celebrities going astray. It was almost on par with the witchcraft rumors in Southeast Asia. Even a few famous tycoons would look for experts in this field to look at feng shui. Mu Xiangshan didn't understand these things. He just thought that if Guijisher had made a fortune in Xiangdu, these rumors would prove that some things weren't groundless. Now that Qiao Jin also mentioned it, he wanted to go to Guijisher's family to take a look. How thick-skinned was he? He found an excuse and Guijisher agreed. How could he not welcome Mu Xiangshan to his family? He couldn't wait to show off in front of him. Chapter 909. Early the next morning, Mu Xiangshan was dressed more formally. After all, he was going to visit Guijisher's family. Xiao Jin wore a beige knitted dress and sneakers. The style didn't match, but it was an unusually harmonious combination. The key was that she looked more like a little fairy. Seeing that she was going out with Mu Xiangshan early in the morning, Qiao Fei couldn't help but ask, "Where are you going?" Qiao Jin replied, "To the Guo family. We met an old man at the club yesterday." The Guo family. Qiao Fei paused for a moment and seemed a little confused. "Is that so? Then you have to go and come back early." Qiao Jin nodded and followed Mu Xiangshan. The Guo family had returned to the capital a few years ago. In recent years, according to the trend, the Guo family's assets had begun to move back to the country. It was only recently that Mu Xiangshan met them. There was still information about the Guo family on the news. Qiao Jin took a few glances and said, "The Guo family is quite lively. And it was very complicated." She didn't know how old Master Guo said that his grandchildren were all good. Because his grandchildren were basically regulars on the news. There were always some rich people who liked to be famous. Their children would do their best to promote themselves on the news. Guo Jisher had a total of 4 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. These were not born of the same parents. Guo Jisher only had one son, who married a young lady from a rich family. The original wife gave birth to a boy and a girl for his son. The strange thing was that the original wife had long divorced Guo Jisher's son and lived abroad with the children. Now, the children at home were all the sons of Guo Jisher's lovers. Although they were the children of his lovers, they didn't seem to care. The news on the internet was all about Miss Guo and young Master Guo. They looked very rich, but their identity was really untenable. It was just as if money could solve some problems. Guo Jisher didn't live peacefully in his early years. However, all his children had accidents, and only this one was left. He doted on her like a treasure. The Guo family lived in a villa area in the suburbs. It was a standalone villa. Guo Jisher was alone in the house when he arrived. The caretaker, Mu Xiangshan, came in with a smile. "Yo, old Mu, you still know to come and see me." Mu Xiangshan smiled and said, "I saw that one of your feet was about to enter the ground, so I came to take a look. If you were to die one day, wouldn't I be able to see you for the last time?" Mu Xiangshan's words were quite vicious, but Guo Jisher didn't care. It was mainly because they were all old, and it was a fact that they had one foot in the ground. He even laughed and hit Mu Xiangshan. "You old thing, you can't say anything good." When she saw Qiao Jin again, she sincerely praised him, "You are really lucky to have such a granddaughter. Mu Xiangshan, you don't have to be envious. After all, this can't be forced. It's fate." Looking at Guo Jisher's grandchildren, Mu Xiangshan couldn't say this out loud. Just as they were talking, a person gradually walked down the spiral stairs in the villa's hall. When she saw someone in the living room, she was a little surprised. "Grandpa." She spoke Mandarin with a kind of accent. It was obvious that she had stayed in Xiangdu for a long time and often spoke Xiangdu dialect. When she spoke Mandarin, it was a little awkward. She was dressed fashionably in a champagne-colored custom-made dress. Her figure was hot, and her hair was hot and wavy. Chapter 9-10. She was Guo Jisher's third granddaughter, Guo Shuoyu. Naturally, she was the daughter of his lover. When it came to hairstyles, it was always awkward. Guo Shuoyu was indeed beautiful with her heavy makeup. However, when she met someone like Qiao Jin, if Qiao Jin was like a lotus in clear water, she was already at the peak. She had a celestial aura that could not be ignored. In front of her, Guo Shuoyu was simply competing with the bright moon, so much so that Guo Shuoyu himself felt embarrassed. She stroked her hair and looked at Qiao Jin. She asked curiously, "Grandpa, who is this?" Guo Jisher looked at her and smiled. Shuoyu, come down. Let me introduce you. This is Grandpa's old friend, Grandpa Mu. This is his granddaughter, Xiao Jin. She's a few years younger than you. Guoshuoyu's lips twitched. She walked over, her posture swaying like the wind. As a young lady, her dress was actually a little bold. It was not too much to wear a low-collared backless dress. She had a good figure, so she could flaunt it. Mu Xiangshan was old-fashioned. Although he had lived abroad, he did not like this. Moreover, he felt that Guoshuoyu was a little embarrassing for the Guo family. Guoshuoyu walked over and looked at Mu Xiangshan and Xiao Jin. She smiled faintly and said, "Hello." Her gaze could not help but size up Xiao Jin with a hint of jealousy. She seemed to be trying her best to maintain her arrogance, causing her chin to be slightly raised. She seemed to be overexerting herself. Xiao Jin's gaze swept over her body for a moment, then lowered down without interest. Seeing Xiao Jin's cold look, Guoshuoyu was a little embarrassed. After greeting them, she found an excuse and left. "Grandpa, I have something to do. I have an appointment with a friend today. I'll leave first." Guojisher was still smiling. "Go ahead." Guoshuoyu hurried off. Not long after, the roar of a sports car came from outside. Guojisher smiled and said, "Shuoyu and the others grew up with me. They live in Xiangdu. They are a little different from here. They are actually quite obedient." After saying this, he gestured for them to sit down. Xiao Jin sat down and scanned the Guo clan. Mu Xiangshan and Guojisher chatted about some trivial matters. Most of the time, it was Guojisher reminiscing about the past. In fact, both Xiao Jin and Mu Xiangshan could tell that Guojisher was a little concerned about his past identity. He used to be the son of the Mu family's helper and called Mu Xiangshan young master. Now that he saw Mu Xiangshan and realized that he was richer than him, he couldn't help but show off a little. Mu Xiangshan didn't say anything when he heard that. He thought to himself, "My son was just a little unfilial. Your house was poisoned. Who's more miserable?" "Riches and honor," Mu Xiangshan spoke softly. Guojisher could not help but exclaim, "Jisher." Mu Xiangshan nodded repeatedly, "Yes, yes, yes, Jisher, Jisher, the past is the past, why do you have to care so much? Look at you now, you have a bunch of children and a big family business, isn't that enough? As long as you don't have any regrets when you leave." Guojisher snorted. "I'm afraid you don't know. When I went to Xiangdu to start my business, those people looked down on people from the mainland. I suffered a lot in order to stand out. Back then, Grandpa," at this moment, another weak female voice was heard. Her tone was very weak. It sounded like she was too weak to stand up to a gust of wind. When she walked down the stairs and revealed her true self, she was also like this. Chapter 9:11. She wore a long white dress that almost reached the floor, and her hair was slightly loose. Her face was exquisite and beautiful, and it was obvious at a glance that she was not Guoshuoyu's daughter. This woman was obviously much prettier. Guozhui, Guojisher's fifth granddaughter. When Xiao Jin saw Guozhui, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Guozhui, of course, noticed her as well. The moment she came downstairs, she met Xiao Jin's eyes. Guozhui blinked, as if she was curious about Xiao Jin's appearance. When Guojisher saw Guozhui, his smile widened. "Zhui, why did you come down? If you're not feeling well, you should stay in the room and rest more." Guozhui smiled. "It's okay. I heard that there were guests in the house, so I came down to take a look." Although she grew up in Xiangdu, her accent was much more normal than Guoshuoyu's, and her Mandarin was very standard. It was obvious that she had put in a lot of effort. Of course, Guo Jishe introduced her to Qiao Jin and Mu Xiangshan as usual. Guo Zhui looked more like the daughter of a prestigious family. She was dignified, beautiful, and elegant. She was so much better than Guo Shuoyu. It was not necessary to compare her with Guo Shuoyu. After all, Guo Shuoyu and Guo Zhui were sisters. It was easy to compare them. Guo Zhui walked over and greeted them with a polite smile. She then elegantly introduced herself. Other than her pale complexion and sickly complexion, everything else about her was perfect. Compared to the other daughters of the Guo family who were high profile in the news, Guo Zhui had never appeared in the news. Zhui has been in poor health since she was young. We have thought of many ways to treat her illness. She has been recuperating overseas. In recent years, I have not been in good health, so she came back to accompany me. She is very thoughtful. Zhui is as smart as you. Even if she is not in good health, it did not affect her studies. She graduated from MIT a long time ago, and now she is helping her father with his business. She is smart and capable. Guo Jishe smiled. He was showing off his granddaughter with sincerity. Qiao Jin blinked and suddenly smiled. Your granddaughter seems to be in good health. She can help you with so many things. The way she spoke was a little strange, but after listening carefully, there was nothing strange about it. However, Guo Zhui's body still stiffened for a moment before returning to normal. Guo Jishe did not understand what she meant, but nodded and replied, Zhui's body is much better now, and she has found a way to control it. Besides, we all love her dearly, why would we let her do something so tiring? I plan to wait until I'm old enough to leave some shares for Zhui, and let her live a life of luxury. Guo Jishe patted Guo Zhui's shoulder. Zhui, you should just enjoy the rest of your life. You're about to get married. I'm sure the 9 sects will treat you well. Guo Zhui smiled gently. Thank you, Grandpa. 9 sects. Mu Xiangshan seemed to have thought of something as he asked incredulously, the Hao family's 9th sect. Guo Jishe seemed very pleased with himself as he replied, yes. Mu Xiangshan was genuinely in disbelief, but he quickly regained his composure and did not ask again. Qiao Jin lowered her body and rubbed her chin. She looked at Guo Zhui curiously. Is Zhui sick? Her question was a little inappropriate, but no one would think there was a problem. Chapter 9:12. Guo Zhui looked at him and smiled gently. It's just physical discomfort. My immune system is weaker than others since I was young, so I often get sick. I'm much better now. A weak immune system wouldn't be such a big problem. Qiao Jin chuckled. I see. Mu Xiangshan guessed that Qiao Jin had seen through something, so he spent the rest of the time playing dumb with Guo Jishe and asking some questions. Guo Jishe was old now, and he was in the same position as Mu Xiangshan. He didn't say much, but he did reveal some problems. Mu Xiangshan and Qiao Jin stayed for lunch, and they didn't refuse. Guo Jishe's son was in charge of the Guo family now, so there was no doubt about the distribution. Some of the shares were in the hands of his son's ex-wife. Even after the divorce, his son did not remarry. However, Guo Zhui's mother was still living in the Guo family as the legitimate wife. Guo Shuoyu's mother was nowhere to be found. Guo Zhui's mother gave birth to the most important Guo sisters in the Guo family, as well as a son. Guo Zhui also had a sister, who was only 1 year older than Qiao Jin. However, it was said that her health was worse than Guo Zhui's. It wasn't suitable for her to even show her face, so she had been recuperating in the Guo family's villa. During lunch, Guo Jishe and Mu Xiangshan chatted. Qiao Jin came over with the excuse of going to the bathroom. He turned a corner and saw the side hall of the villa. The side hall was a transparent glass compartment with a sofa and some basic furniture inside. The sunlight shone in directly, and it was very bright. A girl was lying on the sofa. She was wearing a white lace princess nightgown and holding an English book in her hand. She was very beautiful and looked a little like Guozhui. However, she looked more lively than Guozhui. She was probably Guozhui's sister, Guojulian. She didn't notice Qiao Jin when he came in until Qiao Jin suddenly said, "What are you looking at?" The girl seemed to be shocked and quickly straightened up. When she looked up and saw Qiao Jin, she was a little confused and surprised. "You are?" Qiao Jin smiled and said, "I'm here as a guest. My name is Qiao Jin." Her smile looked pure and harmless, especially with a sense of comfort, which could give people a good impression. When Guojulian saw her coming, she was not afraid. She was just curious. Qiao Jin. She read the name and smiled. Good name. Her smile was a little innocent. However, there was always a kind of melancholy that could not be dispersed between her eyebrows, which made people feel depressed. Qiao Jin asked, "Are you Guojulian?" Guojulian was a little surprised. She straightened up and looked at Qiao Jin. "How did you know it was me?" Qiao Jin said, "You and your sister Guozhui look very similar, no one would not recognize you." Is that so?" When talking about her sister, Guojulian's expression did not look that happy. Instead, it was a little gloomy. "I thought they wouldn't mention my existence. Many people don't know that I'm her sister when they see me." "Why?" Qiao Jin's words were light, but there was a kind of comforting feeling, and a desire to confide in her. Guojulian wanted to say something, but she thought of something and forcibly suppressed it. "I don't usually appear outside, so they rarely know that the Guo family has a granddaughter." Chapter 9:13. This was the truth, because outsiders did not know about Guojulian's situation. The media knew that the Guo family had a few granddaughters, but they had never seen Guozhui and Guojulian. At least Guozhui still showed up in the Guo family, but Guojulian rarely appeared in the Guo family. It didn't seem like she couldn't appear, but as if the Guo family had deliberately hidden her. Qiao Jin was about to speak when light footsteps came from outside. She looked up and saw Guozhui at the door. Her pitiful face seemed a little surprised that Qiao Jin was here. She smiled and said, "Miss Qiao, what are you doing here?" Qiao Jin also smiled and said, "I saw your sister and was curious, so I came to take a look." Guozhui did not expect her to be so straightforward. Under normal circumstances, Qiao Jin should not know that she had a sister. When Guojulian looked at Guozhui, she did not have the sisterly love that she had imagined. Instead, she seemed a little reluctant to get close. She quickly stood up and said, "Sister, I'll go back to my room first." Then, she took the book and glanced at Qiao Jin. She left without saying goodbye. Guozhui was afraid that Qiao Jin would notice something, so she said gently and helplessly, "She's always like this. She doesn't like to talk about my identity in front of outsiders." Julian's body was weaker than mine since she was young, so she rarely appeared outside. So, very few people know about her. I didn't expect Miss Qiao to know. Of course, who doesn't know about the Guo sisters? She pursed her lips, as if it was just a casual sentence, and then walked out. Guozhui looked at Qiao Jin's back as she left. Her eyes gradually darkened, as if she was thinking about something. When they arrived at the hall, Mu Xiangshan asked her, "Where have you been?" Qiao Jin said, "I just went to the side hall and saw Guojulian, Zhui's sister." "Oh." Guojisher tilted his head in surprise. Julian also came out for some fresh air. What a coincidence. He didn't seem to know anything. Qiao Jin retracted his gaze and chuckled. Yes, what a coincidence. Mu Xiangshan looked at Qiao Jin meaningfully, but he did not ask anything. After all, Qiao Jin would tell him everything when they returned. Guozhui followed him out. Coincidentally, someone came to report that young master Hao Jiuzong had arrived. Hao Jiuzong should be Guozhui's fiancé that was mentioned just now. Guojisher's eyes also lit up as he said, "Oh, speak of the devil. I'll let you meet him." Mu Xiangshan, on the other hand, quickly turned his gaze towards Hao Jiuzong. He seemed very curious about this Hao Jiuzong. Qiao Jin had never heard of Hao Jiuzong. At this time, he also raised his eyes and saw a tall figure coming in from outside the Guo family's villa. He was indeed a tall, rich, and handsome man with a height of more than 1.8 meters. His appearance was perfect. Moreover, he had a strong appearance. His eyebrows were very thick, probably like what the older generation said about thick eyebrows and big eyes. When he walked, he was very imposing. Wearing a hand-sewn black suit, he strode forward with big strides, which was very eye-catching. "Grandpa, Shui." After coming in, Hao Jiuzong greeted them. When he saw Qiao Jin and Mu Xiangshan, he raised his eyebrows slightly. Guojisher smiled and said, "Jiuzong, come. This is Grandpa Mu Xiangshan, and this is his granddaughter, Qiao Jin. You should have heard of her." Sure enough, when he heard the name, the surprise in Hao Jiuzong's eyes gradually faded. He seemed to be surprised. "So it's Grandpa Mu and Miss Qiao. Hello." Chapter 9:14. Mu Xiangshan nodded. Qiao Jin glanced at Hao Jiuzong and nodded as well. Hao Jiuzong's eyes were on Guozhui. When he saw Guozhui come out, he walked over and put his arm around her shoulder. He was obviously affectionate and helpless. "I told you not to leave the room unless it's necessary. You're not in good health. What if you fall?" "I'm not that weak." Guozhui seemed to find it a little funny. She grabbed his hand and intertwined their fingers. "I can't stay in the room all the time. I have to get some air." The two of them were a match made in heaven. They were practically a match made in heaven. Qiao Jin only glanced at him, the corners of her lips curled up slightly, and she turned her gaze away without much interest. Mu Xiangshan also glanced at them. He didn't think that they were particularly compatible. Instead, he was thinking about something. Her fiancé was here, and they looked like they were in love. Mu Xiangshan didn't want to stay any longer. He said goodbye to Guojisher for a while. On the way home, Mu Xiangshan clicked his tongue. Hao Jiuzong actually likes Guozhui. Qiao Jin. You don't have to say that, right? Guozhui is also Guojisher's granddaughter. So what? No matter what, she's still a lover. It's not that I look down on her, but a place like the Hao family values status and bloodline the most. I'm afraid you don't know that the Hao family is a big family in Shanghai. They value status the most. Guozhui is an illegitimate daughter. No matter what, she can't be worthy of Hao Jiuzong. So I think it's unbelievable that the Hao family actually agreed. Qiao Jin was very calm. I'm also the daughter of a mistress. Guanqing still likes me. Her biological mother was a mistress. Mu Xiangshan had double standards. How can you be the same as her? You were raised by Qiao Fei. What does that have to do with your biological mother? Besides, how can Guozhui compare to you? It wasn't that he was partial to Qiao Jin. Anyone with eyes could see that Qiao Jin was much better than Guozhui. And Mu Xiangshan clicked his tongue. I keep feeling that Guozhui exudes evil. It wasn't easy to say whether it was evil or not. Anyway, he didn't like his daughter. It wasn't that he was pretentious. He had seen many people like her. Guozhui had some tricks up her sleeve, but it wasn't enough to make Mu look down on her, but she was evil, she herself was evil. But Mu didn't know what was evil. Qiao Jin looked at Mu Xiangshan. You can even tell. Mu Xiangshan paused for a moment, then looked at Qiao Jin. I asked you to go to the Guo family so that you could take a look. Qiao Jin said, there is indeed a huge problem. I've already told you that your worldview is at stake. Mu Xiangshan, he thought for a moment, then sighed and said calmly, I'm old. I've seen all kinds of things. What do you want to tell me? Tell me. How bizarre is it? I can handle it. Qiao Jin thought for a moment. Since the old master had already predicted it, and Muzilian knew about it, there was nothing inappropriate about it. He told Mu Xiangshan about the world of spiritual psychics. But she only briefly talked about it. The main point was still the Guo family. She only said, the main point shouldn't be old Master Guo. It's true that he was poisoned. The main point is Guozhui. I saw something on her. Traces of a formation. Guozhui had taken someone's life. Chapter 9:15. That someone was Guozhulian. And Qiao Jin had a reason to care about Guozhulian, because she saw an array point in Guozhulian's heart. Out of the 9 array points, the 5th one had appeared. Guozhulian's birth should have been a tragedy. She was bound by a very ordinary life-binding array. This array wasn't very dangerous, but it would cause a lot of pain. It was true that Guozhui was weak when she was young, but the pain was transferred to Guozhulian. That was why Guozhulian was rumored to be in poor health. That was probably the reason why the Guo family didn't let Guozhulian appear in front of others when she was young. If Qiao Jin hadn't sensed something and went to the side hall, she probably wouldn't have found Guozhulian today. But she saw that there was something wrong with Guozhui. And old Master Guo wasn't just poisoned. He didn't have an array on him, but there were signs that he was being watched. It was a bit like the skill of a spiritual psychic, probably a wizard. Qiao Jin didn't mention the array points. She only told him about Guozhui and Guozhulian's life-binding array. Even so, it was enough to refresh old Master Guo's worldview. He was stunned for a long time before he said, I've heard some incredible things before, but I didn't expect them to be true. Qiao Jin said, you'll get used to it. Mu Xiangshan, he looked at Qiao Jin with a complicated expression. So you're not a fortune teller. You've become an array master. That's why you can see what's on Guozhisher's body. Qiao Jin nodded. That's more or less what you said. Mu Xiangshan said, good girl, you were raised by the Mu family. If you have the ability, why don't you let the Mu family enter the world's top 100 sooner? Qiao Jin. Do you think some things are free and don't have to pay a price? Mu Xiangshan sighed, but in the end, he clicked his tongue and said, I knew it, then how do we deal with the Guo family's matter? Qiao Jin said, it's hard to say. If you want to solve it, you should tell Guozhisher and let him think about it himself. It's possible that he was poisoned by anyone in the Guo clan. The goal should be to make him die sooner. I can solve the life-linking array on Guozhui, but it depends on how things go. It was easy to solve, but there had to be a reason and cause. Since she was able to bind the life-linking array to the Guo sisters, there should be an array master by her side. Their mother should have a powerful background. However, he didn't show up today. And there had to be a reason. Of course, Qiao Jin could jump out and directly solve Guozhulian's problem, but who knew what he was thinking? This was the Guo clan's matter, so Mu Xiangshan should take the lead. Qiao Jin didn't have to take the lead. Mu Xiangshan obviously understood this. He lowered his head and pondered for a while, then said to Qiao Jin, I'll take you to the Guo clan in the next few days. At the very least, we have to find out who poisoned Guijisher. He suffered retribution at his old age, but I haven't heard of him doing anything outrageous. When we find out who did it, I'll deal with it and let him deal with it himself. Mu Xiangshan felt bitterly disappointed for the Guo clan to have such a scum. He saved Guijisher this time as repaying the kindness of Guijisher's father. Qiao Jin nodded. Thinking about Guizhulian being the fifth array point, she thought about it and went to see Ping Yuan. After Ping Yuan was sent in, she didn't go to see him even once. Chapter 9:16. She went to visit Ping Yuan. Ping Yuan was currently living in a place similar to a nursing home. He was having a good time with a bunch of old ladies and grandpas. Seeing Ping Yuan dancing around on the lawn with a bunch of old ladies and grandpas laughing happily around him, Qiao Jin thought to herself that Ping Yuan was actually a lot less worrisome. She just didn't know what would be waiting for her when all 9 of them were gathered together. After a while, Mo Jiang called her and asked Qiao Jin when she would be free to visit her. Qiao Jin said, "If you have something to say, just say it directly." Mo Jiang laughed like a bewitching demon. Even through the phone, one could feel her seductive aura. "I've recently taken a liking to a female lead role in a film. Unfortunately, when I went to look for her, I wasn't qualified enough. So, I wanted to ask your boyfriend for help." When it was time to make use of her, Mo Jiang did not hesitate at all. Song Yanqing certainly had the ability to do so, but Qiao Jin felt that Mo Jiang was being unreasonable. "You should rely on your own abilities. Besides, this is my boyfriend. It's not appropriate for you to do this." Mo Jiang said, "Don't you want me to become famous quickly and make a lot of money?" Qiao Jin said with some concern, "Actually, you don't have to look for him. Why don't you look for the spirit group? It might be better. They'll definitely do their best to help you settle the matter of the female lead." Mo Jiang paused. "Are you sure?" Qiao Jin said calmly, "I'm sure. Since you've joined the spirit group, you should make use of any opportunities you can. They have to contribute to you, don't you think?" Mo Jiang said happily, "All right, I'll go look for them." Qiao Jin added, "Oh right, there might be another person in a few days." Mo Jiang immediately understood. After a moment of silence, she said, "Is it a man or a woman?" "A woman." "Why is it a girl again?" Mo Jiang clicked his tongue. Can't it be a little fresh meat with 8 packs? It seemed that she had been like a fish in water in the circle recently. Now, she could speak like a tiger and wolf. Qiao Jin said calmly, "I don't mind if you attack an insider. If they became enemies in the future, it would be troublesome if there were problems between the array points." Mo Jiang, ah. After hanging up the phone, Hiao called Qiao Jin as well. It was about the information that Qiao Jin had asked her to investigate the murderer's murder. "It took me a lot of effort to pry open that person's mouth. Fortunately, it worked very well. One of the victims was quite surprising. She was the first wife of a rich family in Xiangdu, and she died in his hands. She was killed when he was running around Xiangdu. He committed 2 murders in Xiangdu, and his successful escape from Xiangdu was definitely related to this rich man's help. The most important thing is that the rich man is still alive." Qiao Jin had a bad feeling. "Who is it?" Hiao paused and said, "His name is Guijisher. He has returned to the capital and has several children. His son is a bastard like him, but he probably didn't expect his father to be so ruthless. TSK, men really turn bad when they are rich." Qiao Jin, she narrowed her eyes slightly. In this world, some things were indeed so coincidental. Her initial premonition was indeed correct. She didn't expect to connect the dots now. She didn't expect that a person who seemed to be smiling could be so ruthless. Chapter 9:17. Xiao Jin's fortune-telling was based on the basics. As long as a person's fate was strong, she couldn't see the past or the future. She could only use the array to check. However, she wouldn't use the array for no reason. Naturally, he would never have thought that the person whom Mu Xiangshan was talking about was actually such a vicious and merciless person. The media gossiped about Guojisher's early years. His first wife was said to have gone abroad, just like his son's first wife. She didn't expect that he killed her. Xiao Jin looked at the information carefully. The murderer's name was Qian Lu. In his early years, he wasn't as perverted as he was now, but he was born with a sociopathic personality. He was in his 40s. When he was young, he committed murder in China. Later, in order to escape the police, he fled to Xiangdu. At that time, the management of Xiangdu was not integrated with that of the mainland. Later, he accidentally sneaked into the local gang in Xiangdu. In that era, many people's family history was not very clean. People like Qianlu didn't have any skills, so he quickly attracted some people's attention. He fought fiercely and had a bloody smell. He taught himself some anti-tracking skills and was later hired by Guojisher. Guojisher asked him to kill his first wife at that time, pretending to be an accident or missing. Naturally, Guojisher would finish the rest. Qian Lu agreed. Why did Guojisher kill his first wife? Of course, it was because he relied on his wife to make a fortune after he went to Xiangdu. He didn't have a good life at home. He obeyed his first wife's words and had always held a grudge in his heart. He was later called a smiling tiger because he did things with a smile and was more ruthless than anyone else. Guojisher's first wife disappeared in this way. This case was only one of Qian Lu's crimes. Later on, he killed another person and escaped from Xiangdu. He was a sociopath, but he was very trustworthy. After taking Guojisher's money, he disappeared without a trace and never appeared in Xiangdu again. In fact, he left Xiangdu. He returned to China and continued to commit crimes. After that, he committed more than a dozen crimes, all at different times. If he had not targeted Xiao Jin, he might not have been caught. They accidentally discovered Guojisher's case, but it had been decades. According to him, he didn't even know where Guojisher's wife's body was. It was extremely difficult to find it, so the police were still collecting clues after receiving the news. They hadn't rushed to the Guo family to arrest Guojisher yet. In the end, Guojisher was poisoned by his family. Thinking of his smiling face, Xiao Jin couldn't help but sigh. There were some things that she couldn't think of. However, she had to give Mu Xiangshan a head-on blow first. Let him see if this Guojisher was worth saving. Therefore, she passed the information to Mu Xiangshan. Old man, you should at least read this. Mu Xiangshan, what? He received Xiao Jin's information, which only contained the details of the Guo family's case. Mu Xiangshan looked at the information and his entire body stiffened. This was the first time he had misjudged someone. After a long time, Mu Xiangshan sighed. I really didn't expect him to be such a person. What a dramatic thing. Xiao Jin smiled. Yes, if you feel embarrassed, we can call the police. The police will tell us how to deal with this kind of thing. Mu Xiangshan. Chapter 9:18. It was rare for Xiangshan to help others, but he never expected to be hit in the head. No one would have thought that Guojisher, who seemed to be smiling, would actually do something to his first wife behind her back. Now that he thought about it, the fact that his son had so many lovers was not much different from him. However, it was surprising that Guojisher only had one son after so many years. On a certain level, he did not know if this was retribution. Xiao Jin left the decision to the old master. Guijisher had committed a crime against his first wife, so there was no conflict between him having to pay the price and finding out who poisoned him. Poisoning was not like setting up an array. Poisoning was something that anyone could do. Xiao Jin could tell at a glance that Guizhui had a life-linking array on her, but it was difficult to tell who had poisoned Guijisher. The harder a person's life providence was, the harder it was to tell. The person who could poison someone had a strong life providence. It was not only the Guo family. If it was to avenge his mother, then Guijisher's son was not very suspicious. Actually, Xiao Jin thought for a moment and said with a smile, if you want to kill Guijisher, you can just poison him. He's already old, so it's easy to do it without anyone knowing. Based on Guijisher's appearance, he seemed to be in poor health due to long-term poisoning. He had lived to this age, so it did not matter when he died. This was not Xiao Jin's intention, but from a normal point of view, this was indeed a little surprising. You don't know. Mu Xiangshan waved his hand. Guijisher may seem gentle, but he's actually very decisive. I've heard that he never lets anyone he doesn't trust handle his food. His steward is in charge of everything. His steward is a brother who has been with him for decades. They're like family now, so he trusts him very much. He doesn't even trust his own son and granddaughter. During dinner today, I saw his brother eat first. The reason he didn't poison him in one go might be because there's no way to poison him in one go. After all, Mu Xiangshan used to be in the business world, so he knew some things better. He thought for a moment. The reason he was poisoned might be because of other factors. After all, in today's society, the poison wasn't limited to just food. If it had been at Guijisher's place for a long time, the symptoms that could cause him to be poisoned would most likely be similar to a certain illness. That was why Guijisher didn't know that he had been poisoned. He had his own family doctor. If it was an ordinary poison, how could he not be able to detect it? Xiao Jin nodded and said, this matter has nothing to do with us. If you still want to save him, then tell him directly. If the place where Guijisher's first wife was killed was found, and now that Qian Lu's mouth had been pried open, it was only a matter of time before Guijisher was caught. Even if he was detoxified, he wouldn't be able to live for long. Hearing this, Mu Xiangshan's expression was still a little complicated. When he was young and played with me, he was a very loyal and honest person. I didn't expect that after a few decades, he would still change. The personality of a child is a child. Who can say for sure what will happen when they grow up? Xiao Jin said calmly, I'll find time to visit the Guo family in the next few days. I'm not interested in him, but I'm quite interested in his granddaughter. Mu Xiangshan was speechless. Chapter 9:19. Guijisher's poisoning couldn't be said directly. He didn't even know. If Mu Xiangshan went to say it, what was the reason? How could he tell? Instead, he would get into trouble. Xiao Jin wouldn't say much. Anyway, the old man had his own assessment of this matter. If he felt that Guijisher was worth saving, then he would save him. If he didn't want to save him, then he wouldn't save him. Guijisher was already so old. In fact, many things were too easy for him. However, this was the way the world was. Even if some people committed heinous crimes, they might still enjoy their old age. No one could say for sure how strange fate was. Array masters carried karma, which corresponded to a sentence, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. They had power that didn't belong to them, so naturally, they had to bear the corresponding shackles. The stronger the power, the bigger the shackles. But people's hearts were always unpredictable, just like Xiao Jin was so Buddhist because she stood in a different position. She respected life. Even if there was something like karma, spiritual readers still had their own way to satisfy their desires if they wanted to obtain more. What bound them was not power, nor karma. It was themselves. If they had no morals, no compassion and respect for life, no matter how strong the karma was, it couldn't control them. Of course, it was impossible to go to the Guo family too frequently. Xiao Jin planned to go in a few days. Song Yanqing happened to be free now. With free time, he asked Xiao Jin to meet. They still met in the usual Chinese restaurant. The environment was quiet and secluded. When he saw Song Yanqing, he was wearing a white robe and was still cold and abstinent. Only his eyebrows revealed a gentle taste for Xiao Jin. Did you encounter something strange again? Song Yanqing already knew about Qianlu's matter, but there was also Guo Jisher's matter behind it. The Guo family and the Song family had no interaction, but he knew about the existence of the Guo family. It's not strange. Xiao Jin took a sip of the tea in front of him and said softly, "It's just a life-linking array and a person I need to find." Song Yanqing, what is a life-linking array? It doesn't sound like a good formation. Xiao Jin thought for a moment and said, the life-linking formation is a little complicated. It's neither good nor bad. It depends on whether the person is willing to be bound. The life-linking array tied one's life to another's. If she died, she would die. If she lived, she would live. It's different from the life substitution array. The life substitution array is usually created when one party can't survive. If there's a formation master who falls in love with an ordinary person, it's very likely that he will use the life substitution array to ensure the safety of his other half. Song Yanqing was a little surprised. The one who was kidnapped is the daughter of the Guo family. Xiao Jin nodded. Yes, Guo Zhui. The one who was kidnapped is her sister, Guo Julian. The Guo family must have found a formation master to help. Guo Zhui's body is weak, and her fate is also weak. She originally had a short life, but it was forcibly extended. The pain is borne by Guo Julian. She glanced at Song Yanqing and explained, Guo Zhui and Guo Julian are both Guo Jisher's granddaughters. Guo Zhui is also engaged to Hao Jiuzong, but I don't know this Hao Jiuzong. The old man said that he's from a big family in Shanghai. I know Hao Jiuzong. Song Yanqing's eyes flashed with excitement. It's a century-old family in Shanghai that has existed since the war. This Hao Jiuzong and I have met in business. He's a very decisive and powerful person. Chapter 920. Song Yanqing didn't say this to praise Hao Jiuzong. Instead, he said something similar to what Mu Xiangshan said. The strange thing is that the Hao family actually agreed to the marriage between Hao Jiuzong and Guo Zhui. Song Yanqing pursed his lips and smiled faintly. Hao Jiuzong is the first heir of the Hao family, which is very different from Guo Zhui's identity. The Hao family values status the most. Guo Zhui is an illegitimate daughter, so she shouldn't be qualified to marry into the Hao family. How did Hao Jiuzong convince the Hao family to agree? Is the concept of family so important? Xiao Jin shook her head. Maybe it's true love. Song Yanqing closed his eyes slightly and smiled. Maybe, but I don't think it's likely. Hao Jiuzong had a younger sister who was not an important person in the Hao family. She fell in love with her bodyguard. In order to prevent them from being together, the Hao family broke the bodyguard's leg and forced the bodyguard's whole family to leave the country, a small country in Africa. They couldn't see the young lady of the Hao family for the rest of their lives. Not long after, Hao Jiuzong's sister hanged herself. Xiao Jin, she stopped drinking water. I thought this was a plot that only exists in the melodramatic TV dramas that Feifei watches. Song Yanqing shook his head and smiled slowly. In this world, there are always some people who value status very much. If they are with someone who doesn't have the same status, the family will think that they have tarnished their bloodline. The Hao family is such an existence. They value bloodline very much, so I'm very curious about how Hao Jiuzong convinced the Hao family to successfully get engaged with Guozhui. Qiao Jin said, now that you mention it, I'm a little curious too. She paused. Just pure curiosity. On the surface, Guozhui was the young lady of the Guo family, but in private, she was an illegitimate daughter who was looked down upon by others. If Song Yanqing and Mu Xiangshan said that about the Hao family, then the Hao family would never agree to let Guozhui marry the legitimate heir of the Hao family. How did he get the Hao clan to agree? It was indeed quite curious. Song Yanqing said, maybe there's a chance to find out. Hao Jiuzong and Guozhui are about to get married. I'll take you there then. Qiao Jin thought for a moment and suddenly said, maybe it has something to do with array masters. Speaking of array masters, Song Yanqing said, the spirit group in Shanghai and the imperial capital are on par with each other. If the news is correct, the Hao family does have some influence in the spirit group in Shanghai. If Guozhui has a life-linking array, then her engagement with Hao Jiuzong may not be a condition on the surface. Instead, it was an array master. It would be much easier for array masters to do these things. I'm not curious about that. Qiao Jin said, now I want to know what kind of existence Guozhulian is. There was even less news about her than Guozhui. She carried array points with her, which was enough for Qiao Jin to pay attention to her. Song Yanqing said, Guozhulian. He had never heard of Guozhulian. He only vaguely knew that Guozhui had a younger sister, so he said, I'll check it out. If there's any news, I'll inform you. Qiao Jin softly said, N. At this time, the waiter began to serve the dishes, and the two began to eat. They came out to meet, so it was naturally not appropriate to talk too much about other people's affairs. After lunch, they had to ask Mo Jiang to eat again in the evening. Because they agreed that Qiao Jin would treat them. Chapter 921. Mo Jiang had to shoot in the afternoon, so she only had time in the evening. Qiao Jin not only invited her, but also invited Meng Qingyu and Yang Qiulu. When Song Yanqing knew that he was going to see these women, he felt very strange. He always felt that there was no man around Qiao Jin, only him and the brothers of the Mu family. However, there were more and more women around her. They went to the set to pick up Mo Jiang, which was specially requested by Mo Jiang. This time, Song Yanqing drove in person. Because he was here to pick her up, he drove a relatively low-key private car. However, the logo of the car was too obvious, which clearly showed the amazing price of the car. Mo Jiang's recent scenes were in the capital. When the car stopped outside the set, it immediately shocked many people. It was not uncommon for stars to drive luxury cars. Many stars had Lamborghinis, Ferrari convertible sports cars, but obviously, some of the brands of cars could not be bought with money alone. One also had to have a membership and get the limited edition. This was not something that stars could dream of with their little money. When Song Yanqing and the others appeared in the set, the whole crew was wondering which big shot had come to visit them. Unfortunately, the car window was closed, so they could not see who was inside. After knowing that Mo Jiang had finished shooting, Xiaxi followed her and asked her with a flattering smile, Mo Jiang, I know a new cake shop opened today. It tastes very good. You need to make an appointment to buy it. I have the qualification to make an appointment here. Do you want to go with me to try it? Mo Jiang had changed into casual clothes and removed her heavy makeup, but it could not hide her amazing beauty. She was playing with her mobile phone. She waved her hand absent-mindedly at Xiaxi's flattery. I have something to do today. Let's talk about it another day. Xiaxi's eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment. Didn't you finish shooting? Where are you going? Can't I have an appointment with someone? Mo Jiang rolled her eyes. However, a good-looking person was still good-looking even if she rolled her eyes. She did it as if it was natural. You care about everything. What's my relationship with you? After saying this, Mo Jiang turned around and left. Xiaxi stood rooted to the ground, feeling wronged and at a loss. The crew looked at each other. Some people clicked their tongues, and some sighed. A beauty was a beauty. Even such a handsome young man could become a bootlicker. In any case, Xiaxi had fans outside. In front of Mo Jiang, he was nothing. Xiaxi's manager was about to vomit blood. He walked over and said to him, "Ancestor, you're still a popular idol. She hasn't officially debuted yet, aren't you spoiling her too much?" "No, do you know what your behavior is called? According to the words on the internet, you're a bootlicker. Look at her attitude. She's obviously treating you as a spare tire, yet you're still licking your face and following her. When the fans see this, they'll turn against you again. You have to at least pay attention to your image, right?" Xiaxi only looked at Mo Jiang's back view. He was a little disappointed. "I don't care. As long as she says something to me, I'll be very happy." The manager, he was really a bootlicker to the extreme. What was so good about that woman surnamed Mo? It was just that, she was indeed a rare beauty in the entertainment industry. Anyone who stood in front of her would be overshadowed. There was nothing to say. The manager was suddenly worried. Chapter 922. At this moment, there was a sudden exclamation. It turned out that Mo Jiang had gotten into the luxury car parked outside the set and opened the door. Her impatient expression instantly melted like a 1,000-year-old iceberg, as if she was smiling happily at someone in the car. That attitude, that expression, and the way she acted in front of Xiaxi just now, were simply worlds apart. What was this behavior called? Bitch in bitch. Xiaxi was stunned. Whose car is that? Her manager was even more stunned. Did you see that? She treated you as a spare tire and didn't even tell you. Who else could it be? It must be her sugar daddy. The manager wasn't making a random guess. After all, this kind of thing wasn't uncommon in the industry. Especially someone like Mo Jiang. She was so beautiful, but she was so arrogant that she didn't even care about the male and female leads. When she was filming, her acting skills weren't good enough and she even rolled her eyes when the director said a few words. The female lead of this movie was an A-list starlet, but she didn't dare to be as arrogant as she was. People had long guessed that Mo Jiang was some sugar daddy's canary sent here to experience life. Otherwise, why would she be so arrogant? Most importantly, the entire crew didn't dare to say anything. Even though Mo Jiang's sugar daddy hadn't shown his face yet, the news had spread like wildfire. Now that they saw the car, everyone finally felt that it was within their expectations. Look, the sugar daddy finally appeared. It was indeed impressive. Just looking at the car, it wasn't something that could be bought with money. The license plate number was exactly the same. It was so dazzling that it could blind people. It was clear that the person in the car wasn't an ordinary person. Xiaxi watched as Mo Jiang got into the car and drove off in a few seconds. He suddenly felt a little dazed and couldn't help but lower his head and mumble, "What can I do to make her smile so happily at me?" The manager. "Are you crazy? What's the point?" "The point is that her sugar daddy is here and you still want to suck up to her." "So what?" Xiaxi insisted. "She didn't do it willingly. I understand that she just wants to be famous." "I don't care." The manager. Why didn't she see that Xia could be so good at licking people? After Mo Jiang got into the car, she flashed a bright smile at Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin saw the group of people from the film crew looking at them with shock, envy, and jealousy. He immediately said, "Won't others misunderstand if she's like this?" Song Yanqing looked at the group of people outside and also glanced at Xia in the distance. The corners of his lips curled up as he said with a smile, "Probably." Then, he drove the car away. Misunderstand what? Mo Jiang didn't care. Those people are always wondering if I'm being kept by someone. I'll just let them misunderstand. Even if I'm being kept, I'll be kept by the best person, don't you think so? Xiao Jin, you're tarnishing my boyfriend's reputation. When he heard the word boyfriend, Song Yanqing's smile became even gentler. Mo Jiang, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about you. Xiao Jin, Song Yanqing, Xiao Jin decisively refused. I can't afford to raise you. He really couldn't afford to raise a woman who cost 3 million yuan to buy a car. Even if the spirit group was willing to pay, they couldn't afford to let Mo Jiang cause trouble a few more times. Mo Jiang raised his eyebrows and sneered. Chapter 923. Meng Qingyu was studying in school when Yang Qiulu called to say that she had a baby with her. If he didn't mind, she would bring Lan Xiaoni along. Of course, Xiao Jin didn't mind. Yang Qiulu was an honest girl. After coming to the capital, she had been diligent. Xiao Jin was serious about taking care of them, but she couldn't really let Xiao Jin take care of them. Meng Qingyu gave her the money that Mo Jiang gave her, but she didn't dare to use it. She also had a job in the spirit group. Other than taking care of Lan Xiaoni, she also went outside to find a simple job. She didn't have a high education, so it was difficult to find a job in the capital. She didn't rely on the spirit group's connections, so she found a job in an internet cafe and worked the night shift. She was in good spirits now and realized that not resting much wouldn't affect her body, so she came up with this idea. In general, she was a very hardworking and down-to-earth girl. Meng Qingyu came with Yang Qiulu. She thought that Xiao Jin had invited them alone, but when she saw Song Yanqing, her eyes almost popped out. She knew Xiao Jin, this fairy-like boyfriend. Every time she saw him, Meng Qingyu would think of the group of ugly male classmates in school. Occasionally, there would be a few good-looking ones. Compared to Song Yanqing, Meng Qingyu instantly felt that this was completely delaying her rhythm of finding a boyfriend. Indeed, only an immortal was worthy of an immortal. She sighed in her heart. Xiao Jin chose the cherry blossom restaurant that he had been to before. After all, the food here was really delicious. Meng Qingyu and Yang Qiulu came and sat down in a private room. When Lan Xiaoni saw Xiao Jin, she called out sweetly, "Sister Xiao Jin." Xiao Jin smiled and nodded. When Yang Qiulu put her down, he touched her head. Yang Qiulu was a little nervous when she saw Mo Jiang, Song Yanqing, and the others. Although she was brought to the capital and her situation was much better, she was still a little timid. Seeing people like Xiao Jin and the others, there was always a feeling of inferiority. However, Xiao Jin and the others were very friendly, and this sense of inferiority would gradually fade as they got along. Mo Jiang, on the other hand, was much more casual. He handed the menu to Yang Qiulu and Meng Qingyu and said, "Feel free to order. Xiao Jin is treating. She recently made a fortune." Xiao Jin chuckled while Yang Qiulu shyly let Meng Qingyu order. Meng Qingyu wasn't so restrained and asked Mo Jiang curiously, "You and that Xia are on the hot search list again. I saw many of his fans scolding you. Are you and Xia real?" Meng Qingyu had asked about this before, but at that time, she thought it was fake. Now that she saw it on the trending searches, of course she had to ask. Mo Jiang said casually, of course it's fake. Why would I date him? Meng Qingyu was shocked. If you don't like him, why did you create a scandal with him? My manager said that creating a scandal is good for me. At any rate, I haven't officially debuted yet. Mo Jiang blew on her nails. Besides, Bei Tai is trying to be nice to me. Why should I reject him? If I reject him, wouldn't I be hurting his heart? In order to not make him sad, I had no choice but to create a scandal with him. Everyone, she was simply a scumbag. Even Meng Qingyu felt that Mo Jiang was going overboard. She pointed at her and said, scumbag. Mo Jiang raised her eyebrows. Say that again. Meng Qingyu was instantly terrified. After all, Mo Jiang was a super powerful array master. She couldn't afford to offend her. She couldn't afford to offend her. Chapter 9:24. Qiao Jin and the others ate together, so the conversation became more casual. Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing weren't talkative people. Young Qiulu was also more sensitive and introverted, so she didn't like to talk much. She had been eating quietly or feeding Lan Xiaoni. Meng Qingyu and Mo Jiang were the only ones talking the whole time. Most of it revolved around Mo Jiang's news. After all, Mo Jiang was in the entertainment industry now, so he knew a lot of news and gossip. Meng Qingyu was very interested. Song Yanqing and Qiao Jin sat together. While eating, Qiao Jin's phone received a text message. Song Yanqing subconsciously looked down and saw it. Goddess Qiao, I like you. May I have the honor of treating you to a meal? Song Yanqing, his eyes immediately looked down, and his gaze was a little deep. When Qiao Jin lowered his head, he naturally saw it too. Then his gaze met Song Yanqing's. Both of their eyes were very calm. Only his eyes looked deep, as if there were waves rolling and surging. Qiao Jin said very naturally, occasionally, there will be such harassing messages. Song Yanqing, after all, her phone number wasn't a secret. It was registered in school. Someone would try to find out Qiao Jin's number and send him a message from time to time to confess. Qiao Jin's method was to block the number. After all, she could prevent people from harassing her openly, but she wasn't good at the information network. He just wanted to confess that he liked her. It wasn't a violation of karma, so she couldn't do anything. This kind of thing would happen once in a while. If she blocked it, she wouldn't be bothered by it. Those who knew would naturally understand if she didn't respond to the message. So far, she hadn't met anyone who would pester her. Of course, Qiao Jin wouldn't give them the chance. You're very popular. Song Yanqing's tone was light, as if he was stating a fact. Qiao Jin nodded. Sort of. Being good-looking was indeed a little popular. Song Yanqing, he wasn't jealous, he just found it a little funny. In the past, he had been too confident in Qiao Jin. Now that Qiao Jin was enlightened and knew that he liked him, he believed that Qiao Jin would not do anything inappropriate to him. However, when he thought about how there were still people who would tirelessly confess to Qiao Jin, he felt a little uncomfortable. This was how she felt about her boyfriend. The subtle changes in the two naturally attracted the attention of Mo Jiang and the others. As Mo Jiang spoke, he looked over and asked, "What are you doing? Is someone harassing you?" It seemed that the two of them had changed after reading a text message. Qiao Jin said, "There's a harassing message, but it's okay." She picked up the phone and deleted the message in front of Song Yanqing and blocked the number. Mo Jiang glanced at Song Yanqing and then at Qiao Jin. He opened his mouth and wanted to say that it was no big deal to have a few spare tires because he was good-looking. However, Song Yanqing seemed to have sensed something and looked over. His gentle expression made him look like a noble young master. Even the smile on his lips made people feel gentle and coquettish. It was just that, there was an inexplicable sense of danger. It was so dangerous that Mo Jiang wisely swallowed the words he wanted to say. Forget it, Big Boss was different from her. Big Boss's boyfriend didn't look like someone who could be a spare tire. To be honest, if Mo Jiang had a boyfriend of this standard, she wouldn't have kept a spare tire either. Who could she blame? She could only blame Xia Shi for not being good-looking enough. Chapter 925. After the meal, Song Yanqing and Qiao Jin sent Meng Qingyu and the others home. Mo Jiang usually lived in Meng Qingyu's house. But recently, she had taken a fancy to a detached villa and wanted to buy it. Considering the fact that the villa was worth hundreds of millions, Mo Jiang was now working hard to accept acting roles. After sending her home, Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing left. After dinner, it was getting late. Song Yanqing drove her directly back to the Mu family. The atmosphere in the car was light. Now the weather was getting colder, and the temperature in the car was getting lower. Song Yanqing turned on the heater and asked Qiao Jin, "Are you cold?" Qiao Jin shook her head and said, "It's a little stuffy." Song Yanqing turned off the heater again and asked her, "When is the holiday?" Qiao Jin thought for a moment, "It should be soon." Song Yanqing, "It should be." Qiao Jin, as a person who seldom went back to school, Qiao Jin said that it was not appropriate. She smiled. Song Yanqing shook his head helplessly and said with a smile, "You." The car arrived at the Mu family. Song Yanqing parked the car outside the glass villa of the Mu family. When he got out of the car and was about to open the door for Qiao Jin had already gotten out of the car. He looked at Qiao Jin. His eyes flashed, and he only said, "Rest early." Qiao Jin nodded and said, "You too. Good night." When she was about to enter the gate, Song Yanqing stopped her again, "Qiao Jin." There seemed to be some helplessness in his voice. Qiao Jin turned back. Song Yanqing's tall figure came over and held her wrist. He sighed, "Forget it. I'll do it myself." As he spoke, he lowered his head and kissed Qiao Jin on the corner of her lips. The kiss was very light, but it was much deeper than before. He stopped at the corner of Qiao Jin's lips for a second and then moved to her tender red lips. It felt very soft, like cotton candy. It was just a gentle kiss. When he looked up, he saw Qiao Jin's unsurprised expression. He said with a smile, "This is the routine. Good night." In fact, Qiao Jin didn't feel much. She just felt a little itchy. Now, she didn't feel anything strange about Song Yanqing's touch. She just simply felt it was a little itchy. Kissing was a strange feeling, she thought, but it was good. She smiled, "Okay. Time, she could go into the house." Upstairs, someone angrily slammed the window shut. "Damn, my eyes." Musichu was lying on the sofa reading a book with his head tilted. Hearing Musilian's complaint, he asked coldly, "What's wrong?" Musilian said with jealousy, "Someone is showing off their love. Isn't it a little too much?" "Musichu, why didn't you feel that way when you had a girlfriend? How can it be the same?" Musilian was not convinced. "I have never brought my girlfriend home. You see, in broad daylight, the Qiao family doesn't carry people anymore. Musichu, there are 2 Qiao family members in our house. Which one are you referring to?" "Musilian, the most shameless one." "Musichu," he turned over and whispered, "Crazy." Then he ignored Musilian. Musilian was still a little unconvinced. Since Qiao Jin had entered the house, he opened the door and went downstairs to the living room. Chapter 926. Fortunately, he bumped into Xiao Jin. Musilian clicked his tongue and said, "You're so lovey-dovey. How dare you commit a crime in broad daylight?" Xiao Fei was watching TV in the living room and didn't know what was going on. When he heard Musilian's sarcastic tone, he immediately scolded him. "What's wrong with you? What are you doing in your brother's room? Don't disturb his studies. He's studying my ass. He's reading comics too. Why don't you scold him? His studies aren't affected by comics either. Unlike you." Xiao Jin entered the room and saw Musilian's sarcastic tone. Furthermore, she definitely knew that Musilian had seen them from the window, so she didn't feel embarrassed. Such things were normal between couples. Musilian had many girlfriends himself. Xiao Jin would be a fool to believe that he was still that innocent. She ignored Musilian and said to Xiao Fei, "I'm back." Xiao Fei turned around and smiled at her. "You're back. Did you have fun outside with Lord Song today?" Xiao Jin nodded. Musilian immediately said, "You guys didn't bring me along." Xiao Jin said, "Why should I bring you along?" Musilian was speechless. His words were so self-righteous that Musilian didn't know how to respond. He felt a little sad. After all, they were friends who had gone through life and death together in a special world. They were different from ordinary people. He was different from second brother. However, second brother was really patient. He had told him everything, but he actually resisted the urge to ask Xiao Jin. How impressive! Of course, Xiao Jin said that these things couldn't be revealed. Now that Musilian said it, although it was an accident that second brother tricked him, he felt a little guilty. He rolled his eyes and didn't say anything to Xiao Jin. He returned to Musichu's room. Xiao Fei said, "Your brother is coming back tomorrow. This time, the matters abroad are almost settled. Your uncle Zhenming said that Qi Ji will be in China for the rest of the time. Our family can finally eat together again. It's great to see you guys every day." Xiao Jin nodded. Qi Ji is coming back. That's good. Mu Qiji's experience with Ho Wan's incident probably refreshed his horizons. He often stayed abroad, and calmed himself down. "Oh, right," Xiao Fei suddenly whispered, "Your brother has a girlfriend again." Xiao Jin was a little surprised. "He has a girlfriend?" Xiao Fei nodded. "Yes, your brother told me. He didn't say who it is. He only said that it might surprise us." Xiao Jin thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Song Siyu." Xiao Fei, the woman's eyes widened, and her fingers trembled again. She said with a trembling voice, "Who are you talking about?" Xiao Jin. "I just said it casually." The last time she watched it, she saw that Song Suyu's love scene would be very late, but it was only based on her age. However, her life was set quite late, which meant that Song Suyu would get married very late. Mu Qiji was the same. Now that Xiao Fei said this, she suddenly thought of Song Suyu. And when she suddenly appeared, it was often true, so she said Song Suyu's name. However, it was obvious that Xiao Fei didn't know yet. She seemed to find it hard to accept. "How do you know? Is the Song Suyu you're talking about Lord Song's sister?" Xiao Fei wasn't very familiar with Song Suyu. He had only seen her once or twice in the Song family. Chapter 927. The Mu family didn't know much about Song Yanqing's sister. After all, they didn't have much contact with the Song family. Song Suyu had never been to the Mu family either. Xiao Fei only knew that Song Yanqing's sister was called Song Suyu, and she wanted the two families to meet officially. Now that she heard Xiao Jin suddenly say that the boss's girlfriend might be Song Suyu, her eyes almost popped out. "Don't scare me," Xiao Jin said. "I'm not scaring you. Maybe I'm wrong." "Then why did you suddenly say his sister's name?" Xiao Fei was stunned. It was already a miracle that her daughter could hook up with the young master of the Song family. If the boss's girlfriend was Song Yanqing's sister, how much smoke was coming out of the Mu family's ancestral graves for such a good thing to happen? When Xiao Fei wanted to continue asking, Xiao Jin found an excuse and slipped away. Xiao Fei still didn't believe it. She was a little uneasy, so she called Mu Qizhi directly. Mu Qizhi was preparing to return to China, so he was surprised to receive a call from his mother. What was even more surprising was that Xiao Fei asked him directly on the phone, "Qizhi, tell me honestly, is your girlfriend's surname Song?" Mu Qizhi was a little surprised. "Mom, how did you know?" He and Miss Song had only confirmed their relationship yesterday. He didn't even think about it before. He didn't reveal that Miss Song was also abroad. How could Xiao Fei know so quickly? Even if he had reminded his mother that it might be someone unexpected, Xiao Fei had to be very smart to guess that it was Miss Song. Song Suyu is Lord Song's sister? Xiao Fei was even more incredulous. Her voice was a little louder. Mu Qizhi was even more surprised. He sighed and said, "Mom, don't be so agitated. It's indeed Miss Song Suyu. It's just that we only confirmed our relationship yesterday. Whether it's stable or not is another matter. Don't be too agitated. I don't plan to bring her to meet you for the time being. Neither you nor the Song family should know about this." He also knew about the relationship between Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing. Could it be that Song Suyu had told her brother about it? Xiao Jin said so. Xiao Fei stammered, "How did you get together with Miss Song?" "Oh, you and Xiao Jin are really doing big things without saying a word." Mu Qizhi, he found it a little funny. How could this be considered a big deal? Fate had arrived. He and Song Suyu had naturally met. Previously, no one had this idea. They were just giving it a try. Some things, who could say for sure? Xiao Fei said, forget it. We'll talk about it when you come back. Mom doesn't think it's a big deal. It's just that it's too surprising. You're already so old. How can I control you, Mu Qizhi?" Xiao Fei hung up the phone. When she saw Mu Xiangshan return with a worried look, she didn't have time to ask him what had happened. She just announced the good news. "Dad, let me tell you a piece of good news. Your eldest son has a girlfriend. Guess who it is?" Mu Xiangshan had just investigated Guo Jisher's matter and was now vexed. When he heard this, he said in annoyance, "It's normal for him to have a girlfriend. Look at your surprise. Which golden phoenix did he find? Could it be from the Song family?" Xiao Fei. "Why did all of you know but he didn't?" Mu Xiangshan saw Xiao Fei's dumbfounded expression and was instantly speechless. Chapter 928. The one from the Song family. Perhaps it was because of surprise, even Mu Xiangshan's voice rose an octave, which was rare. "Xiao Fei, I heard him say that. It seems to be true." Mu Xiangshan was shocked. Because of the shock, he looked at Xiao Fei. "Capable." Xiao Fei. "Dad, I don't quite understand what you mean." Mu Xiangshan clicked his tongue. The son and daughter that they gave birth to actually wiped out the Song family in one fell swoop. They only have one daughter and one son. Xiao Fei, she was also stunned. She blinked her eyes and said, "How would I know that they did such a big thing without saying a word? I was quite surprised when I found out. It was very sudden. I remember that Qi Ji didn't know the young lady of the Song family. I've only seen her twice. She's very elegant and beautiful. They didn't even speak much. It was just that Song Suyu had greeted the Mu family when he received them. It could be said that Xiao Jin's relationship with Song Suyu and the family was better than Song Suyu's. He didn't expect that his boss would suddenly know Song Suyu. How did they know each other? How did they confirm that they were dating? He was really curious. Xiao Fei had already expected the storm that Mu Qiji might face when he returned home tomorrow. One had to know that there were a few gossip fanatics in the family. Xiao Jin and the others didn't seem fanatical, but they always knew what was going on. They must be gossiping behind his back. Amazing, amazing. Mu Xiangshan also sighed. After all, he really didn't expect Mu Qiji to know Song Suyu. No one expected it. It was quite a sudden thing. It seemed that they still had to come back to find out what the situation was. It was just that Xiao Jin had a relationship with a noble young master like Song Yanqing. Now, Mu Qiji was dating his sister. TSK, Xiao Fei's son was outstanding. His daughter could even hook up with Lord Song. He didn't even have any intelligence back then. Why did he focus on having children? Each one was more outstanding than the other. Seeing Mu Xiangshan's expression, Xiao Fei knew that Mu Xiangshan was up to no good. Although he was a little surprised, he couldn't help but feel happy. I didn't expect it to be the eldest daughter of the Song family. Now I can rest assured. It wasn't that they would definitely get married, but the incident between Mu Qiji and Ho Wan had left a shadow in Xiao Fei's heart. Now that Mu Qiji had found Song Suyu, there was a guarantee. The two of them could continue to date peacefully without causing any trouble. It was just that in the future, if they broke up, would it be awkward? It wasn't that she didn't trust the two of them, but it was impossible to be certain about such things. There were benefits to this marriage, but he was also afraid that there would be disadvantages in the future. Don't worry about what? Mu Xiangshan clicked his tongue. When he thought about Guo Jisher's situation, he still felt a little vexed. It was a little too much to not save him, but when he thought about what he had done, he was already so old. How could he be so ruthless when he was young? Mu Xiangshan sighed in the end. He didn't want to get involved in the poisoning. To put it bluntly, with Guo Jisher's character, how could he explain how he knew? He would most likely suspect Mu Xiangshan. He could even lay his hands on his own wife. He was an old man who lived one day at a time. He still wanted to live a few more years and not get involved in the Guo family's matters. He also had to remind Xiao Jin that even if he had the ability, he shouldn't get involved with a family like the Guo family. Who knew what the other party would do? Chapter 929. Xiao Fei and Mu Qiji were curious, but they could only wait until Mu Qiji came back tomorrow. Before they came back, Xiao Jin's matter was dealt with first. For example, the Guo family's matter. Although Qian Lu said that he forgot where he killed Guo Jisher's wife and threw her body, he still remembered that he had killed so many people. The police investigated in the direction he said and finally found Guo Jisher's wife's body. Qian Lu mixed up her body with another dead person's. Fortunately, Guo Jisher's wife's body was not thrown in a dark corner or in the sea, but in the wild. It was just that the wild was a dense forest, and no one had visited it for many years. When the police found the body with a police dog, it had already turned into a pile of bones. They preliminarily identified the bones as a woman, and the other people Qian Lu killed in Xiangdu were all men, so the possibility of this woman being Guo Jisher's wife was very high. Because it had been a long time, it was difficult to verify the identity, but the police contacted Guo Jisher's son, Guo Zicheng, and asked him to provide information. Through the comparison of current technology, it was finally confirmed that the bones were indeed Guojisher's wife, Lei Yonglan. Now that the identity was verified, and with Qianlu's statement, even though Guojisher was now very old, he was still taken away by the police for investigation. This sudden incident, of course, caused a sensation in the entire Guo family. Guojisher was taken away at night. It was said that the Guo family did not sleep at all that night, completely stunned by the sudden news. How could the younger generation of the Guo family know what happened in the past? Strangely, there was news that the police took Guo Zicheng away at that time. He did not seem surprised that the police took his father away and accused him of hiring someone to kill. Mu Xiangshan learned the news the next day when he got up. Because Qiao Jin was also an insider, Mu Xiangshan waited for her to wake up at the dinner table and asked her, "Do you think it could be Guojisher's son?" Qiao Jin thought for a moment and said, "According to what you said, it's not impossible." Guo Zicheng was Guojisher's son, and the father and son had a good relationship for so many years. Guojisher certainly did not guard against him. Only Guo Zicheng had the best opportunity to make a move. Mu Xiangshan frowned and said, "People outside say that Fu Gui and Guo Zicheng have a good relationship. If it's really Guo Zicheng, did he already know that his mother's death was related to his father?" Qiao Fei woke up early in the morning and heard the two of them talking about gossip that she didn't understand. She immediately interrupted the conversation forcefully. "What do you mean that the father is related to the mother's death? What kind of melodramatic plot is that?" Qiao Jin glanced at Qiao Fei, then looked at Mu Xiangshan and nodded, "It's very possible." No matter how good the relationship between father and son was, and no matter how much he knew that his father had hired someone to kill his mother, it was possible for him to have a twisted mind. It was understandable for Guo Zicheng to secretly make a move, but it wasn't enough to completely erase the suspicions of the other Guo family members. After all, once Guojisher died, it would be time to divide the assets. However, Guo Zicheng was still alive. No matter how one looked at it, it could only be that he had inherited the most wealth. Whether it was in terms of vested interests or logic, Guo Zicheng was the biggest suspect. Of course, the police did not know that Guojisher had been poisoned. They were investigating the case of Guojisher hiring a killer. Chapter 930. Qiao Fei wasn't too happy. "You can't keep talking about things I don't know." Qiao Jin briefly told him about the Guo family. Qiao Fei was dumbfounded. "What's going on?" Qiao Jin said, "You've watched so many TV dramas. Do you still find these things strange?" Qiao Fei said, "Girl, TV dramas and reality are two completely different concepts. In reality, this Guojisher is too much, right?" Qiao Jin said, "Calm down. You'll get used to it." Qiao Fei. "How can anyone get used to this kind of thing? How scary." Mu Xiangshan sighed. "I'll go see him today." After all, Guojisher was already in the police station. They couldn't pretend that they didn't know anything. At the same time, he said, "There's a high chance that he'll be released. It's been too long, and Guojisher is so old now. Even if they find evidence that he killed his father, there's nothing they can do." Guo Zicheng probably thought of this, and that's why he attacked his father himself. They just didn't expect that the scourge would live for 1,000 years. He was already poisoned, and it looked like he was going to die soon. Qiao Jin said, "We can't be sure that it's Guo Zicheng yet." Mu Xiangshan said, "Most likely." He still had speculations about some things, but Mu Xiangshan didn't care about the other aspects of the Guo family. For example, the array formation. After breakfast, he set off to the police station to find out more about Guojisher. Qiao Fei said to Qiao Jin, "Since you have nothing to do at home, why don't you come with me to the airport to pick up your big brother?" Qiao Jin was a little confused. Isn't he going to come back by himself? The people from the company should be there to pick him up. Aren't you going to pick him up because you want to know about him and Song Suyu? Xiao Fei didn't mind being exposed. He said confidently, Jean, aren't you curious? Xiao Jean, not curious. Xiao Fei, there was nothing to talk about. Since her daughter wasn't going with her, Xiao Fei could only give up on this plan resentfully. At the same time, she asked her to ask Song Yanqing if the Song family knew about this news. However, Xiao Jin felt that if Song Yanqing knew, he would tell him. If he didn't say anything now, it meant that the Song family didn't know. After all, Song Suyu and Mu Qiji had only confirmed their relationship 2 days ago. Out of consideration, Song Suyu wouldn't tell the Song family so quickly. It could only be said that the Mu clan had guessed it too quickly. Mu Qiji would only be home in the afternoon. Xiao Jin was not important for now. She had to go to school. She couldn't always skip classes. Even if the professional classes weren't stressful for her, she still had to pay attention to the other classes. It was almost the holidays, and the weather was getting colder and colder. She was now used to wearing more clothes. She wore a knitted jacket over a sweater, and her whole person showed a kind of peaceful feeling. Walking on the campus, she was still the most eye-catching light in the crowd. In fact, compared with other things, Xiao Jin was simply too low-key in school. She didn't participate in any club or school activities, so she wasn't very outstanding in school. Even if she was the campus belle, she wasn't very conspicuous. In addition, she didn't participate in any competitions. She wasn't as outstanding as Musichu and the others. Now the students had tacitly agreed that Xiao Jin was a beautiful vase. Even if she was the first in the professional class, so what? She didn't seem to think about her future. So far, she hadn't done anything else. Chapter 931. Xiao Jin naturally didn't care about these speculations. He returned to school for a day, and then it was time for the holidays. During the weekend, the teacher looked for Xiao Jin to have a chat. He wanted to know what Xiao Jin thought about the future. After all, he would be in his 4th year next semester, and he would have to start preparing for graduation. After all, this was Yanhui University. Xiao Jin was simply an anomaly. Even now, he still hadn't made any preparations. The teacher was confused. Xiao Jin's answer was naturally to leave it to fate. The teacher was speechless. How could his graduation plan be left to fate? As expected, with money, there was no need to worry about such things. The teacher could only sigh. After school, Xiao Jin didn't get the driver to pick him up. The main reason was that Duan Nianru, who he hadn't seen for a long time, had called to ask him out. Xiao Jin nodded. She had seen many people, but everyone had their own lives. Unless it was necessary, there was no need to disturb them. Duan Nianru also wasn't suitable to be involved in such matters. When she saw Xiao Jin again, she was very excited. Xiao Jin, long time no see. Xiao Jin nodded. It hasn't been too long. How have your studies been? Duan Nianru's face fell. Why are you bringing up studies? She thought for a moment and suddenly asked, Is your second brother doing well? Xiao Jin grunted and said with a smile, You mean Chi Chu? He's doing well. Previously, Duan Nianru had saved Musichu. Later on, she had gotten to know Musichu. However, they didn't meet every day. At the start, Musichu had treated her to a meal to repay her for saving his life. Later on, nothing happened, and the two of them rarely met. A girl's first love was always there. Thinking of Musichu's appearance, Duan Nianru's heart couldn't help pounding. However, she knew that Musichu only treated her as a little sister. She wasn't Musichu's type. Saving someone once wasn't enough to make the other party devote themselves to him. Duan Nianru had only saved him, and she wouldn't do such a thing. Moreover, he was the second brother of a big shot. Oh, Duan Nianru was stunned for a moment before she explained her purpose. I came to tell you that I'm going abroad as an exchange student. Qiao Jin was a little surprised. Don't exchange students have to have good grades to go? Duan Nianru was well aware of her results. Duan Nianru's face reddened. It's not because of my grades. It's just a coincidence. I got to know a professor from a foreign school who does special biological experiments. I'm interested in this field, and I have some talent for it. Although it doesn't have anything to do with my major, it's still not too late for me to change my major. Their school just happens to have an exchange quota with our school, and he wanted me to go over. Professor. Qiao Jin looked at Duan Nianru. When he didn't see any fluctuations coming from her, he paused for a moment before nodding. Since it's your own choice, I'll naturally support you. Study well overseas. If you're not used to it, I can introduce you to a unit. It's easy and has a lot of money. In any case, he was a formation master. If Duan Nianru needed help in the future, he wouldn't mind pushing her to the spirit group. Duan Nianru thought for a moment before smiling. I know. Thank you. That's why I asked you out this time. I want to treat you to a meal before I go abroad. Chapter 932. Mu Qiji was coming back, but since Duan Nianru was leaving, Qiao Jin naturally had to accompany her for a meal. She nodded and went with Duan Nianru to the place she had booked. When Mu Qiji returned home, Qiao Fei called Qiao Jin to ask why she wasn't coming home. Qiao Jin said she would be back later. Qiao Fei could only say that it was a pity that Mu Qiji was back, and she couldn't face the scene of the gossip. Qiao Jin, she went to eat dinner with Duan Nianru. But for some reason, the dinner wasn't too peaceful. She knew something was about to happen, but there were too many people involved. It was hard for her to guess what it was. When the dinner was about to end, Song Yanqing called her. I received a special message that you will definitely want to know about. Qiao Jin knew that it definitely wasn't related to Mu Qiji. What's wrong? My subordinates received a special message. Guo Julian appeared at the high-speed train station with a fake identity. She should be trying to escape. Right now, the Guo family is looking for her everywhere. They've already found her location, so there's a high chance she won't be able to escape. Guo Julian. Qiao Jin frowned. Could it be that the restlessness came from her? She wanted to run. No wonder. Why would she run? What had happened for Guo Julian to use a fake identity to escape? Then she must have been planning this for a long time. It's related to her sister. But I'll tell you now. You might not know about the secular world. It's related to her sister, Guo Zhui. Why don't you let her tell you personally? Right now, even Hao Jiuzong's people are chasing after her. Why don't you take this opportunity to bring her back? Do you need my help? Qiao Jin said, it's fine. I'll go. The high-speed train station was too crowded. It would be easy for her to bring someone away. Song Yanqing was right. Since Guo Julian wanted to escape, something must have happened. She might as well bring Guo Julian back. Song Yanqing, okay, I'll send you a message. When Qiao Jin received the news, he naturally went to pick up Guo Julian. Since she was running away, then something terrible must have happened to the Guo family. Now that Guo Jisher had been taken away, the Guo clan was in a mess. It was indeed a good opportunity to escape. After sending Duan Nianru back, Qiao Jin used a formation to appear near the high-speed railway station. In Song Yanqing's message, Guo had disguised herself and was now alone in the high-speed train station. There were many people following her, and she was probably very scared. She was too easy to hide, but she was also very easy to catch. Guo was wearing a gray coat, a hat, sunglasses, and a mask. She coughed from time to time, so she could perfectly disguise herself as a patient. At the very least, it wouldn't make others feel strange. But in truth, she didn't need to disguise herself. She was a patient. She was curled up in a chair. The ticket in her hand showed that she still needed to wait for 20 minutes before the high-speed train would depart. She was a bit anxious, and she looked at the ticket gate. It hadn't even opened yet. She grew more and more flustered. The more crucial the moment was, the more urgent she became. She wanted to escape. She wanted to leave this city. No, she wanted to leave the Guo family. She didn't want to stay in the Guo family and become Guo Zhui's painful substitute, bearing all the pain for her. Why? Why? Every time she thought of this, her tears would fall. Chapter 933. She couldn't make any strange appearances, or it would alert others. She was already very eye-catching, and some people would even wonder if she was a star. But just as Guo looked around uneasily, she saw a few people coming in from the other side of the high-speed railway station through the sunglasses. They were wearing black suits, and they were obviously looking for someone. It was not safe after passing the security check. They could come in as they wanted. Guo recognized that one of them was Hao Jiuzong's bodyguard, and her face suddenly changed. Why didn't he let her go? Why did he help Guo to torture her? Guo couldn't help crying. She trembled and turned her head hurriedly, not daring to move at all. She was afraid that the more she moved, the more she would attract the attention of the people around her. But they were coming. She looked up at the notice board. It didn't show green, which meant that she couldn't enter the station yet. At this moment, she felt a light pat on her shoulder. Guo trembled and almost screamed in fright. Shoo, low voice sounded in her ear. Guo heard a familiar female voice and turned her head in horror. The girl was wearing a white long coat with long hair. She also wore a simple pair of sunglasses like her. But even so, it couldn't hide her fairy aura. It was just that people couldn't see her specific appearance. But Guo recognized her instantly. It was Qiao Jin, the Qiao Jin who appeared at her house that day. Her appearance here made Guo tremble, because she didn't know if Qiao Jin was also here to catch her. Qiao Jin put his index finger between his lips, grabbed her arm, and whispered, "Follow me, or they will find you." Guo eyes widened. She hesitated for only a second, and then followed Qiao Jin without hesitation. Qiao Jin kept grabbing her wrist. Guo found that she was going straight in the direction of the bodyguard. She was a little frightened and said in a crying voice, we'll be caught." "No, trust me, they won't find out." Qiao Jin's tone was very light, faintly carrying the power to pacify her, making Guo gradually feel more at ease. Qiao Jin led her through the crowd and directly past the bodyguards. Logically speaking, it was indeed strange that the two of them were wearing sunglasses and one of them was wearing a mask. However, the bodyguard turned a blind eye and walked past them. Guo was so surprised that she couldn't help but look back. She realized that the bodyguards were indeed not paying attention to her and Qiao Jin at all. What was going on? She was stunned. At this moment, Qiao Jin continued to speak as he walked, "It's stupid of you to run away. How can you trust the person who gave you his ID card? He is one of Hao Jiuzong's men." Guo face paled. How is that possible? That was her brother who had watched her grow up, even though he was the son of the butler. He said that he couldn't stand Guajulien's pitiful experience in the Guo family, so he helped her by forging a fake ID card and giving her a bus ticket, just to let her leave here. Today, Guajisha was caught, and the Guo family was in chaos, so she had a chance to run away. However, she was soon discovered. After all, the Guo family always reacted quickly when she disappeared. Guozhui couldn't leave her. Chapter 934. I'll tell you why later. Now, just come with me. Outside the station, Xiao Jin even flagged down a car and gave Meng Qingyu's address. In the car, Guozulien couldn't help but look at Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin took off his sunglasses. His clear and bright eyes were calm as he looked at her. What do you want to know? Guozulien thought for a moment, took off her mask, and said in a low voice, I want to know why you came to save me. Or whether he saved her or not, she still had some doubts. Xiao Jin, I'll tell you when we get there. In fact, the latter information was found out by Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing said that it was better for Guozulien to say it herself. Of course, Xiao Jin already had a faint premonition that it would be another dramatic story. The people she had saved and brought back to lead the array points always had troubled backgrounds. Meng Qingyu, Yang Qiulu, Mo Jiang, and Peng Yuan. Mo Jiang was the only one who lost his memory, but Song Yanqing saw the high priest's past from her. He also knew that she carried the life of restoring the country, so she must be very miserable. Could it be that all the people with the array point were miserable? But there were worse, so the selection criteria of the array point was a bit confusing. Guozulien lowered her head, and her fingers clutched her pants tightly. She was still a little uneasy. She was too scared. Even now, when she thought about coming back with Xiao Jin, she didn't know why she followed Xiao Jin. Could Xiao Jin be trusted? She wasn't sure, but she inexplicably felt that there was a power in him that made her believe in him. And now that she had followed him, if Xiao Jin wanted to do anything, she couldn't resist. Her body was too weak. In fact, as long as she didn't return to the Guo family, she could go anywhere. At the same time, the Guo family's bodyguards and the Hao family's bodyguards, who found nothing at the high-speed rail station, finally confirmed that Guozulien was missing. The fact that the train hadn't left yet could only mean one thing: Guozulien didn't come to the high-speed rail station at all. However, they had received the message. Guozulien was clearly at the high-speed railway station and had even seen the message. Hao Jiuzong's bodyguard could only tell the news to Hao Jiuzong. When Hao Jiuzong received the call, he stood in front of the transparent glass of the hotel and looked at the night view outside. His eyes were very dark, and there was even a hint of anger. She ran away. The bodyguard could only bite the bullet and answer, yes, we've searched everywhere, but we couldn't find her anywhere. We checked the high-speed rail station surveillance, but we couldn't find Miss Guo. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air. Hao Jiuzong gloomily said, we have spies in the airport, the bus station, and the high-speed rail station. If she's not here, then she hasn't left the capital. Find her even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground. He hung up the phone and tugged at his tie. He had never been so irritable before. There was even a kind of panic that he had never felt before. Where could she run to? The capital was so big. If she couldn't run out, wouldn't she just be waiting for death with her body? She would rather die than save her sister? Hao Jiuzong's eyes darkened. He took out his phone again and dialed a number. His voice was low and calm again. Yanqing, I need your help. The person on the other end of the phone raised his eyebrows slightly, then replied gently, okay, tell me. I'll help you as long as I can. Chapter 935. Xiao Jin had just arrived at Meng Qingyu's house with Guo Julian. She knocked on the door, thinking that Mo Jiang should be here now. She never filmed at night, so she was even more pretentious than the male and female leads. While waiting for the door to open, Guo Julian looked left and right in a panic. She had never been to such a small place. She was used to staying in the Guo family and had never seen the outside world, so she didn't know that this was a place where ordinary people lived. But the smaller it was, the more uneasy she felt. Mainly, if someone came to catch her, it would be difficult for her to escape. The room wasn't soundproof, so she could vaguely hear the mother scolding the child from next door. "You don't even know how to solve this problem. Don't you know how to solve a linear equation of two variables? Didn't your teacher teach you? Ah, how can you be so stupid?" She could even hear the child retorting, "My parents' genes are like this, how can I be any better?" What followed was the scene of the mother wailing and the child being filial. Guo Julian was speechless. She didn't know why, but she relaxed again. Xiao Jin frowned and knocked on the door again. She could feel that there was someone in the house. It was Mo Jiang. I'm coming. Aren't you going to let me take a shower?" A coquettish female voice sounded. Soon, footsteps came over, and the door was opened. The woman wearing a mask and a bathrobe gave Guo Julian a shock. Mo Jiang looked at Xiao Jin and then at Guo Julian. Why did you bring a child back?" Guo Julian was slightly stunned when she saw Mo Jiang in front of her. She couldn't see Mo Jiang's face through the mask, but judging from his figure, this woman's figure was too good. Xiao Jin walked in with Guo Julian and closed the door behind her. Seeing that Guo Julian was still a little scared, Xiao Jin comforted her, "Don't be afraid. No one will find you. The Hao family and the Guo family will never find this place. I can promise you that." Only then did Guo Julian feel relieved. She took off her sunglasses, revealing a pale face that was simple yet elegant. She actually looked very lively, unlike her sister's temperament. It was just that his lips were a little pale and his whole body was trembling because of nervousness. His face was too pale to look at. She was an exquisite and lively pretty girl. Yo. Mo Jiang suddenly bent down and scratched Guo Julian's cheek with his fingertips. "Where did this poor thing come from? Why are you so scared? What's wrong? Are you being mistreated by your family, or do your parents favor boys over girls? Wasn't this the tragic fate of Meng Qingyu and Yang Qiulu?" Mo Jiang naturally expected the person Xiao Jin brought back. Guo Julian was touched by his red fingernails and trembled. Seeing her trembling like a small animal, Mo Jiang became more interested. "What's wrong? Do you think I'm scary? Don't tease her." Xiao Jin sat on the other side and poured a glass of water for Guo Julian. "She just ran out of the house. It's normal for her to be scared. She's now afraid of being caught." Mo Jiang curled his lips and put his elbow on the sofa. "Did her parents hit her?" Xiao Jin shook his head. "It's not like that. Let her say it herself." Guo Julian's eyelashes trembled. She took the water that Xiao Jin poured for her and held the glass. She looked a little pitiful. "Can you help me?" Xiao Jin nodded. "Of course. Otherwise, why would I bring you back?" In fact, he didn't care what happened to Guo Julian, but Mo Jiang obviously wanted to know. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.